Welcome to episode 143 of the Grip Strip Podcast, the championship season edition of the Grip Strip Podcast. Plenty to talk about in regards to the triple header at Phoenix to finish the NASCAR season in the top three series, along with other series around the world, both MotoGP and Moto2 and Super GT in Japan. So those are two series that we'll get into in the GSP Roundup. We'll also talk about the final race of the 2022 World Endurance Championship at Bahrain and the last race of the Rally Championship in Japan before NFL Week 9 discussion and previews and picks for the Brazilian Grand Prix and our usual segments, Josh, the sim segment, and the like. My name is Philip Matthew. I'm your host, and I'm with my co-host Joshua Fine, coming off of a birthday celebration where he watched his Jacksonville Jaguars beat the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah, I mean they should be in Oakland or LA or wherever. Maybe they should be in a van down by a river. They're pretty hopeless, but the Jacksonville Jaguars did work. Trevor Lawrence actually looked like a quarterback, and Travis Etienne is the truth.
Yeah, Travis Etienne didn't have the best game, but he had 2 touchdowns. And Trevor, I don't think he was the reason why they won necessarily. He didn't outright win it for them, but he played solid, didn't make any mistakes, and helped the team to get a win. So yeah, it was pretty exciting to watch, and pretty fun experience, and of course, good way to celebrate birthday and everything, getting a W there in Jacksonville, and seeing that, of course, seeing a fan go out and streak on the field in his shorts or whatever, and they probably could have put that guy in the lineup because he looked like he had some speed to him as well. But yeah, good weekend there, of course, and of course, we got NASCAR championship weekend that we got to talk about, and there's a lot of interesting things that happen throughout the trucks race, the Xfinity, and even the Cup side. So yeah, ready to get into it.
And we have a special guest today, somebody who I've known for a few years and has been on this show before, a NASCAR expert, media representative over time, a responsible father and husband these days, celebrating his Giants being good again. So that's something for him to celebrate during the rest of this year since NASCAR is over. Great to have. The Talking in Circles was part of what kind of got me going on this path. And I'm thankful for that because of this man right here, Clayton Caldwell, for the great job he did in his level of preparation. I definitely don't meet that level of preparation with this show, but I think it's part of what makes the charm of the GSP. But Clayton, I'm glad to have you on this day that is the first day of the now 2022 NASCAR postseason. A lot went on at Phoenix this past weekend. We kind of see the future of the sport and kind of connections to the past all through everything that went on this past weekend at Phoenix. And thanks for coming on the GSP.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And yeah, it is nice to actually have a football season in November. For, as Giant fans, we don't really experience that the last several years. Our season's been over in November, so it's been nice to have that. And yeah, the racing was good. I mean, it's certainly a lot to talk about at Phoenix. Logano winning the second championship, and it doesn't seem like that long ago when Mark Martin was sitting there telling us about this kid Joey Logano and how everybody should pay attention to him. And he could be winning cup races at the age of 14, Mark Martin always said about him. And it took a little bit of a time. He struggled at Joe Gibbs, that 20 car, and a shadow of Tony Stewart there for a little while. Zipadelli, and I don't think him and Zippy saw eye to eye there. And then bam, he got to Penske, and he's really done well. And, however you feel about this championship format, certainly, that's another discussion for another day. But he's got 2 championships now, 31 wins, and certainly putting himself into the conversation of a guy who could be one of the greats of all time. And went out there and really, I thought, I know there was other drivers who led. Ryan Blaney, his teammate, got up there and led, but really it was Logano's race and really Logano's championship to lose. Ross finished third and had a decent day. Bell, he had some issues, and not to totally take over or say anything, but poor Christopher Bell. I mean, it's tough enough to run for the championship and to have your focus solely on racing, and for him to have his first championship race in the number 20 and just be really have to prepare for a championship, and then all of a sudden the news comes that one of the hierarchy people, probably your boss, I guess the person you probably report to more than even Joe, Coy, passes away, and just the distraction of all that going on, and having to mentally cope with that and then run for a championship. I felt bad for Christopher Bell. I really did. I couldn't even imagine what would have been in his what would have gone through his brain. And so despite the circumstances, he did pretty well. And I think it was a learning year for Christopher Bell. I don't know if he had a great year. You could say great year, but he got to the Final Four. And so overall, I think it was Logano's championship to really lose, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. And I'd be remiss if we don't give our condolences here on the GSP to the family of Coy Gibbs, to Coach Joe Gibbs, Ty Gibbs, who we'll mention later, is the XFinity Series champion after quite a week. He was able to celebrate with his mom and dad and his grandfather on the start-finish line or whatever, and that was the last pictures that we have of Coy Gibbs, is with him and his son celebrating his son's triumph and accomplishment, winning that championship, knowing more or less that he's going to be taking over the 18 car, and probably an absolute one of the greatest moments you would think for a father to see your son be able to accomplish a dream, a goal that they probably had from very little. So condolences, thoughts to the family of the Gibbs family in this tough time, and it definitely affected the Gibbs organization yesterday in general, and people connected to that group, and even ones that aren't like directly connected to it at the moment, but still, it is a family. NASCAR is a close-knit community, like most motorsports communities, and a lot of people were affected by the loss, and considering how sudden it was, literally hours after the Xfinity Series ended, the rumors were all over social media, family emergency. And when I read that and that Ty wasn't going to drive, I had the thought that it was either, Coach Gibbs, or could have been something with his dad. I mean, I really didn't think okay, maybe his dad was in the hospital. Something was okay, fine. Or something was with, but maybe something would have happened with his grandfather, but it's insane to think that Joe Gibbs has to bury both of his sons. There's it was a degenerative neurological disorder that took JD from us a few years ago, who was basically the guy that ran Gibbs, the company, and then Coy was forced into that role in a sense, coming off of the motorcycle, dirt bike side, and led the team for the last few years, last couple, 2-3 years, and now he's gone. So you gotta wonder what the succession plans are. You gotta wonder what's gonna happen there. It's kind of a talk that is going on with Penske earlier this year in regards to all the different entities that he's involved with and all the different deals that are going on there at 85 years of age. And, you can also look at it also with Roush, Fenway, Keselowski, with Brad Keselowski coming in, and with something we'll also talk about here after we go over this Cup race, with Jimmie Johnson adding his name to ownership. Jeff Gordon, who essentially is the guy at Hendrick Motorsports now. We're seeing the new age of ownership, and it's coming with a lot of the great drivers in the sport over time. But now we have to wonder about what that'll be with the Gibbs organization. But that's not right now. That's not, we can't discuss that now, of course, but I figure it will be a discussion to have in the coming months and years once things kind of settle down. As Clayton mentioned, Joey Logano won at Phoenix in the finale for the Cup Series, dominated the race, qualified on pole. Basically, it was similar to 2018 when he went in there with saying we were the favorites and went out there and won that deal. He did the same thing again yesterday. 4th win of the year, 3rd at Phoenix, and 31st win of his Cup Series career, 29th at Penske Racing. It's going to take a little bit of time for he needs to win a few more races. Another 6 or 5 or whatever to get to Brad's number that he had at Penske Racing, but he's more likely going to pass Brad for the most Cup wins at Penske, and he might set every other NASCAR record for Penske too, even with them not really having an Xfinity or truck presence anymore because he's that young. 31 wins, 32 years old, 2 championships. Him and Kyle Busch are the only multi-time champions out on the grid starting next year. It's crazy to think that where Joey Logano was a decade ago, where he might have been out of the sport because of a tough start to his career. And Brad Keselowski said to Roger Penske, we should look at Joey Logano as a possibility to take over the 22 car when the whole situation, AJ Allmendinger had his situation. They had a revolving door of drivers. And 9 years later, 2 championships, Daytona, winning a lot of the biggest races. He's won the Clash a few times. He's done everything. He's done what everyone and Mark Martin said he would do. He has become a multi-time Cup Series champion. He led 187 of the 312 laps in the race yesterday. Ryan Blaney was his main competition. Basically you look at, so 187, 287, and 9. Well, no, that's no. So they led over, they led all but, 15, 16 laps. Yeah. All but 16 laps of that race, which is just insane. 290, yeah. That's just insane, but it is Phoenix. It's kind of what the racing is. They didn't put the spray down this race and kind of affected things, I think, a little bit. But Joey Logano gets the victory. Ryan Blaney finishes 2nd. Ross Chastain from 25th finishes 3rd. A lot of focus on him. We'll talk about it in a minute. Chase Briscoe finishes 4th. Had a chance. He was leading late after late restart. Ran up front all day. Finishes 9th in points. Huge day for Ford in general. Kevin Harvick gets yet another top 10, breaks a record that he had with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt for the most top 10s consecutively at one racetrack. William Byron 6th, Kyle Busch in his last race for Joe Gibbs and M&M's finishes 7th, Denny Hamlin 8th. Kyle Larson, who was battling for the Owners' Championship and is the defending winner and champion of the series, defending winner of this race, champion of the series, finishes 9th. Christopher Bell finishes 10th. Daniel Hemrick, who was filling in for Ty Gibbs in the 23 car, jumped in, started tailback, and finished 17th. So credit to him. Kind of speaks to the fact that he's pretty good in a Cup car. He can do stuff in a Cup car, but he's not so good in an Xfinity car. Chase Elliott finished 28th. Brad Keselowski caught on fire because of the exhaust deal they have going on there. So, Josh, I'll throw to you first. Joey Logano, 2-time champion, domination, basically said that's what was going to happen, and he did it. It's similar to what Tony did in 2011, but it wasn't as much psychological. It was just they went out there and they were prepared. They were better prepared than the other teams. None of these other teams really seemed to have what they needed this whole weekend to do what they needed to do to possibly beat Joey Logano and the 22 team. And now he inserts himself in fine company with the late great David Pearson being the first multi-time Ford champion since David Pearson. So that tells you how bad it's been for Ford and winning championships in NASCAR. It is true. There's been a bunch of one-time champions for Ford over the years, the likes of Alan Kowicki and Dale Jarrett and Matt Kenseth and Kurt Busch. And after that, Joey was one there. Brad won for Dodge. Kevin Harvick won for Chevy when SHR was still a Chevy. Trying to think about other Ford champions over
Bill
time.
Elliott.
Bill Elliott was 87
88.
and should have won in 80 or 88. My fault. Dale was 87. Bill was 88. Rusty was 89. And before Bill, Awesome Bill, I don't know. It was a while.
Probably Pearson.
It might have been
It was
Pearson.
Pearson, because you think about Mr. the King drove Mopars and GM products. Cale Yarborough drove GM products for Junior Johnson. Bobby Allison drove a Buick when he won for Dyegard.
So did Darrell Waltrip.
And Darrell Waltrip drove Buicks and Chevys. It is David Pearson. Benny Parsons drove a Chevy. It tells you how. I mean, Chevys win the manufacturer's title, but they've also won a lot of championships. It also helps they go with some of the best teams. So Joey Logano goes out there and gets the win, and it really wasn't close.
Yeah, I mean, it's not really close at all. I mean, I think as soon as he won the pole, he had a pretty good feeling that Joe Logano was probably going to end up winning the race, and just the way that this race played out, with the way that the next gen car races, and plus knowing that the top four are probably going to have, and plus 5 if you want to count Larson in there as well, probably going to have some type of advantage over the field. They're going to have a little bit more leeway. Just complete domination, and it wasn't really close. There's a bit of the part of the race where Ryan Blaney had the lead, and at the end I thought maybe Ryan Blaney might be able to go up and pass his teammate, but either he started to lay off and not put Logano under any pressure, which would have opened the door for possibly Ross Chastain to get up there, but managed to stay behind his teammate and fall into second. So they finished exactly where they started there, with Logano first and Ryan Blaney second. But yeah, just this race overall, and there wasn't really a whole lot of passing once they got in a green flag run. Really, I mean, you had to see variation in tire wear, which, if you had new tires, certainly better than older tires. Look at what Chase Elliott was able to do in the middle of the race and unlap himself, and briefly get back into the top 5 before he got spun out on one of the last restarts. But just a complete domination by Team Penske, and really Joey Logano. So crazy how he started the year winning at the Clash. And it was kind of an interesting deal there, and then he goes out and wins the Southern, or not the Southern 500, but the Goodyear 400. Wins at Gateway. Wins this race. Just really a unusual season where we didn't really see a whole lot of domination out of anybody really. Maybe Chase Elliott was the closest to that, but in the final 10 races he didn't really get the job done. But yeah, this was just a complete good effort by Team Penske there, and you have to wonder if they're gonna next year are they going to be the favorites, or early season favorites, between Logano and Ryan Blaney, and even throw in Austin Cindric with his road course experience. Are they going to be the early favorites right out of the gate coming into 2023? We'll have to see, but yeah, just when they dominated when it counted, in a year of parity where there wasn't really any true number one team. They're the ones that come out on top at the end of the day.
And it's something to look at when you consider Ford struggled all year in general. I mean, Penske had their moments. Stewart-Haas, of course, with Chase Briscoe early in the year, and Almirola early in the year looked like they had something going, but then that went away. And then Harvick came back when he was in a essentially must-win scenario to get himself in the playoffs, get 2 wins in a row, and then it all blew up in the first round of the playoffs. I honestly thought he was a title favorite after his run late in the summer there, Clayton. But we talk about Ford and them coming through and being able to win this championship was just huge going into next season for Penske. First time Penske has won. It's interesting. 31 years he's been involved in both IndyCar and NASCAR together as an owner. First time he's actually won both titles in the same year, which is I know Ganassi attempted to do that for his time when he was in both series, and he had maybe one shot, maybe two shots to do it with the NASCAR side. But Penske has had way more opportunities over the years because his IndyCar program is elite. His NASCAR program has kind of always been maybe, we compare them in a same type of level as a Hendrick or whatever, but maybe in half a step below. In this case, they come through. But I'm going to go to you in regards to Hendrick. They had two opportunities to win championships yesterday. William Clyde Elliott II is the 2020 Series champion he wasn't able to qualify that year, and his car was a rocket ship. He came from tailback and won the race with relative ease. I think Jimmie Johnson, that was his final race as a full-time Cup competitor. I think he had the best car, and they wouldn't allow him to win because they wanted the box office deal. I think we talked about it on that show, but whatever, on Talking in Circles. And then last year, Kyle Larson qualified on pole, had the pit stop to win, and won the race. Yesterday, neither one of those cars were a factor, it's like a major factor. Elliott was the regular season champion. He had the most points, playoff points, and he needed every one of those because if he hadn't had them, he wouldn't have made the Final Four. It cost him a chance at the Owners' Championship. And then Larson was off this year in general, wasn't anywhere near as prolific as he was last year in his 10-win campaign. That everyone has said, oh, well, he's the new second coming or whatever, going in there and dominating. He didn't seem as dominant with this car. Does this go down as is this a full-on disappointment for Hendrick Motorsports, considering how they were the best team, I think, for a good part of this season in general? All four of their drivers won a race this year. To have an advantage early in this next gen car, Gen 7 package, and to come away empty, that's not what Hendrick Motorsports is about, really. And they didn't have a great day the day before either in the XFinity program.
Yeah, no, I think it's a little surprising, and I think Josh really hit on it when you watched qualifying on Saturday and you saw the speed out of the 12, or the 22, I should say, excuse me, and really the Penske cars in general, and then you looked at, where the Hendrick cars were that, needed to have a solid day, and you saw Larson had a good lap, and so did Chase Elliott, but really where near Logano was, and when the first part of the race started, you kind of saw how Logano just took off and was really dominant. You usually see that from when Chase won his championship. You saw that immediately. You saw he went out front and just kind of dominated and just left the field all by himself. And Larson had done that all last year. I mean, Larson did that. Larson was the key guy. And, I think it was more of this next-gen car in a way was, I won't get into my problems with it, but it was interesting in a way because it seemed like nothing carried over. Sometimes you'd see a guy in this old car where if, like you said with Harvick, for example, you have a guy who would find something and you'd say, they're going to find it for the next 10 weeks and really just take off. I felt like with this next-gen car at different type of racetracks, maybe it was the margin of error for this car. It just seemed like when somebody had a good week, it didn't carry over at all. You could go back, following week and they'd be horrible. So that was sort of interesting. And I felt like, for Hendrick, Chase didn't have a great playoff. Second at Bristol, but you look at his finishes, aside from Talladega, which is sort of a outlier itself to begin with. Charlotte Roval 20th. Las Vegas, he finished 21st. Homestead 14th. Was running decent at Martinsville, but ended up 10th. Kansas 11th. It just seemed like Chase could never really find that momentum in the playoffs, that consistency. And Larson, going into Phoenix was running pretty well. I mean, he wasn't great all year, but going into Phoenix, he had some good runs leading up to that race. So you felt a little bit better, I think, about how things were headed for Larson. But again, it just seemed like, for whatever reason, things for Hendrick this year really just, they couldn't find that momentum. And you knew going in, again, qualifying, you knew going into this week at Phoenix, that was going to be the big deal, where you could really wade qualifying because you sat there and said, this is basically what you bring to the racetrack is what you got. we've learned all year that the previous week really didn't matter. So as soon as Logano went out and won qualifying and put the laps together that he did, he sat there and said, okay, he's gonna be tough to beat, and he was. And when you put your eggs in the basket as far as one race is concerned with this playoff format, and you were kind of beaten when qualifying started. I think that's what unless Logano shot himself in the foot somehow, or had a major mistake on pit road. That's kind of what everybody was waiting for. It's Logano's championship to lose. We all kind of said that going into Sunday after watching what he did in qualifying. It's Logano's championship to lose unless he shoots himself in the foot, unless they make a mistake, and he didn't do that. Got in a clean air, he was gone, and really all the other guys were kind of fighting, ill handling cars at times and other issues as well. But as far as Chase Elliott was concerned, just a little off at Phoenix, and that's all it takes right now. So, I wouldn't say it was a disappointment. Hendrick overall, I felt like I said, it just seemed like the engine that start and then gets stopped. Obviously, the Bowman deal with the next gen car didn't help things. And I felt like Byron just had a good start to the year, a pretty good start to the year, and then faded as well. So, it was a very odd year with this new car, and it's going to be interesting to see next year. Everybody a year under their belt with this new car, and if what we saw in 2022 is going to be the norm for this car, or is it just the fact that it was the first year and everybody kind of had a fresh notebook, nobody really knew what was going into it, and now that everybody's got their notes and they kind of looked at this race car and got an idea of what it's going to do, is one team really going to, or a couple of teams I should say, really going to shine, and then some of these backmarker teams are going to kind of come back down to earth a little bit. It's going to be very interesting to see, but it just seemed like, again, for Hendrick, I think overall Phoenix was sort of an epitome of what they were all year. They just couldn't find a consistency base to compete with the 22.
I can see that. I can see what both of you guys have talked about so far for those three guys, and I'll kind of put it out here. Let's go over, the incident, the only real incident that took place that anyone really cared about. I know this because I have a friend who's a fan of William Clyde Elliott II, was the restart incident that saw Ross Chastain go, and essentially he made a move left because William Byron had a bad start. And at the same time, Chase Elliott had a later move to react to that or try to get down low because of the stupidity of Phoenix Raceway and the fact that they have 18 miles of runoff room for a 1 mile racetrack, completely wasting the whole entire racetrack. They could, if you're going to reconfigure it, at least reconfigure it so it actually isn't a complete clusterfuck of a track, and maybe make it more racy. That'd be a novel concept. But Ross Chastain got into William Clyde Elliott II, basically ended his day. Clyde sat there with Jeffy, and Jeffy talked him off the ledge because he was going to use a bad word or something, so he was going to have to go to timeout in the pool room or something, or he might have had to. Well, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go. I was going to say something really effed up there, but I'm not going to say it. That's maturity, folks. In my old days when I used to do NASCAR, I really would have went there, and it would have been really disgusting and sad. But I'm not going to do that because it's my show. Clyde fans felt very aggrieved. His championship was essentially over at that point. I honestly thought he was going to slow down and he was going to send Ross. But I guess his car wasn't turning well enough and he couldn't slow down enough to justify this thing. Christopher Bell, Clayton, you mentioned earlier with the whole situation with Coy Gibbs. I think that fundamentally affected everybody in the Gibbs camp. I think that also affected Darrell Wallace Jr. He did have a decent car for a while. Then he started having mechanical brake issues. He had some other issue that I heard about earlier today. It didn't seem clear what happened to his car. The only person that wasn't was, of course, the guy who wasn't directly connected to the whole situation, which is Daniel Emmerich, formerly of Gibbs Racing last year when he won his championship, jumping in the 23 car, and he was able to finish top 20. Christopher Bell winning twice in must-win situations, kind of proving that talent and skill that many people have thought of that he has. Adam Stevens, trying to get that third championship and first without Kyle Busch. When Kyle Busch, on his way out the door with Joe Gibbs Racing, said that the breakup with him and Adam Stevens was really the beginning of the end for him at Joe Gibbs Racing. It's similar to Jeff Gordon and Ray Evernham, honestly. And he said that too. It's like we were like Jimmie Johnson and Chad Knaus. I mean, that's kind of high. That's going pretty high. I think more Jeff Gordon and Ray Evernham based on the statistics. Even though I think, honestly, Jeff and Ray set a bar that a lot of people had to meet, which is why Chad did what he did with Jimmy. Point is, both of those guys made the Final Four, and I'm opening this up to the panel here. For a first-year team, I mean, you brought this up, Clayton, in regards to this Gen 7 car, but for a first-year team with two cars, number one, and to have a team that just 2 years ago was not a factor in the playoffs, which was Ganassi, and to go and finish third in the race, second in the championship, with a guy that a couple of years ago was running starting parks for insert team name here. And it's something that we have not seen in NASCAR in a long, long time. Whether you like him or don't like him, Ross Chastain, he's an underdog story, and it would have been, and it's not just a Hail Melon from last week. It's not smashing watermelons like Gallagher. It's not the fact that he runs into people and doesn't really care like certain people in the history of the sport. It speaks to what Justin Marks is trying to build in regards to an organization and what the future of NASCAR could be if the likes of Justin Marks are able to impart their type of business model into this, because these teams don't make it there. It's always the Hendrick, it's the Gibbs, it's Penske, it's SHR, it's whatever, RCR back in the day. You know, those are the teams, the standard bearers. Those are the ones that are supposed to be there. But Trackhouse got there. And I think that's a huge sign of things to come with some of the other pieces that are kind of falling into place. And I think it's a positive sign. There are things with this next-gen car, and I think we can add this into this piece with these two guys that made the Final Four. There are positives and negatives with this car. I know, Clayton, you said you wanted to talk about it. I'll end this part of the discussion, but thoughts on Bell being essentially going to be the lead dog at Gibbs. I mean, he's the future of Gibbs is basically him and Ty. We know that the days of Denny Hamlin, he's never really been the lead dog. It was Kyle Busch. He's going to be the lead dog in terms of veteran, but he's more looking at his organization out the door where his commitments are. Martin Truex doesn't know if he's going to race from year to year anymore. So what do we think of in regards to the performance of Chris Bell, Josh, to get in 2 wins in cutoff situations with a crew chief, one of the best crew chiefs in the sport? Didn't have a great year, to be fair, until about midway through the season they started to switch it on, got themselves into the mix. Has he turned a corner? Is he going to be able to do what he needs to do to last at Gibbs, which doesn't seem to be something that happens for a lot of these young guys? See Joey Logano, see Eric Jones, see Daniel Suarez. Those are just 3 examples. They're running through people the same way Ford runs through people. That's why Chevrolet always wins. And then also what Trackhouse did this year in their first full year with 2 cars to put themselves in the mix, have one car finish second in points, another car just outside of the top 10 in points. Huge result for essentially a brand new organization a couple years ago, and all the investments that Justin Marks had to make and sacrifices they had to make. And then the new car, pros and cons. And I'll go to you first, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, just the consistency really, I think, is what you have to look at between all the teams, not just Chris Bell or Trackhouse, but, every team. And I think really what makes, each of those individual teams, drivers, have some level of success this year was just the way that the next-gen car handled it didn't to carry over from what we were talking about earlier. There wasn't really any team this year that really had any level of consistency from week to week where they were truly dominant. This was the first season in a long time where no driver led over 1,000 laps. I think since like 2002, so 20 years ago. I think Dale Earnhardt Jr. was the only driver to have led over 1,000 laps, and everybody else led under that. Well, this year nobody led over 1,000 laps, and which is a crazy statistic, considering how in the last couple of years there have been a handful of drivers who each had at least 1,000 laps led, and last year Larson had 2,000 laps led, and just the way that the next gen car handled on a lap to lap basis, where it was really hard to nail the setup consistent on a consistently stable setup where you could expect the car to handle the same way throughout the course of a fuel run or a tire run, and just that challenge I think is what led to teams like Trackhouse coming out and having the level of success that they did. I think also just for Trackhouse alone, they came from just one car in 2021, and then they acquired the assets of Ganassi, and I think that also helped them a bunch. Being able to acquire all those resources and everything, and come out and be really good out of the gate in 2022. You saw that early in the season with the way Ross Chastain raced at Las Vegas, and then you could kind of see it coming along throughout the year until once they got to the road courses and some of the mile and a halves, they really had good pieces. And Daniel Suarez, he had a career year for his what he's been able to achieve so far, and they had plenty of races where he was really good, just didn't have a whole lot of luck. And then with Chris Bell, I mean nobody really had any saw like what he was able to do until he went out and won a flat track at New Hampshire, and then I think the way that he performed in that race, once he got into the playoffs, you really had to consider him as a somebody that could, come out and be a, potentially a championship 4 driver. And look at how he performed at the very beginning of the chase or of the playoffs, and they ended the first round, and he was on top of the points lead in the standings, and he was one of the, or at least the first couple of races he was in first, and he was somebody you had to look at. And then he was on the edge of not making it in, but then he managed somehow to make it in at the Roval, and then had the incident where he got collected with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson's deal, but then came back and used tire strategy to be able to get to the lead at Martinsville. And I think if they had found something at Phoenix, we would have been looking at possibly Chris Bell winning the championship this year, but they just didn't have quite the speed at Phoenix as Joey Logano did. And same thing with Trackhouse. They had good long run speed at the end of this race with Ross Chastain, but they just didn't have enough laps, enough time to be able to get to Joey Logano there. So yeah, just throughout this year, just people not being able to hit the setup on a week-to-week basis, just the intricacies of how this next-gen car handles, you just didn't really see somebody, lead on a week-to-week basis. And, there are times where Toyota was good, there was times where Chevy was good, Ford was good, but nobody could do it throughout the entire season. And, you wonder how it's going to look like next year, once teams, they've got a year of data on this car, if it's going to look a little bit more normal, not as volatile or as parity as it was this year. And there's of course still going to be changes, maybe horsepower changes. Obviously they've already announced that they're going to fix the rear clip for next year, as obviously we had a lot of issues with that this year, especially with concussions and driver safety. So, there's still some things that they're gonna have to work out there, but I think the general baseline is there, and probably within the first third of the year, or even less the first quarter of the year. I think you're going to see who's actually good, and who's going to likely be there at the championship for next year in 2023.
Clayton, what were your thoughts on those two? I mean, you gave your thoughts earlier about Chris Bell a little bit, but you did say you had your thoughts pro and con in regards to this next gen car. So I figure might as well let us know what you thought. You're coming from the same realm as I did in regards to where our fandom started. We've been in what is it? I think Gen 3. I think is when our fandom started, Gen 3, Gen 4 era. So now we're on the 7th generation of car. It was a totally different type of car. Essentially, it's a GT3 spec, supercars, V8 supercars kind of spec in regards to the way they made it. Independent rear suspension, sequential gearbox, digital this, that, and the other thing. More aligned with how the car, their actual real life counterparts look. I think they could learn more from what the supercars did with their Gen 3 cars with the Mustang and the Camaro to really see what those cars should have looked like, and also built them more like that. But that's beside the point. But what were your thoughts on Trackhouse and how a new team comes into the mix and is able to actually have a chance at a championship relative to what the status quo has been for many decades, and also what the thoughts on next gen cars as we move into 2023?
Well, you touched on, I think, a major positive of the next gen, and that is that a team can come in now and compete. And I don't know if they can come in now, and that's a whole other thing with the charters, but Justin Marks did, it wouldn't have been possible, I don't think, with the old car this year. I don't care how good his people were. Travis Mack, the crew chief of the 99, and oh goodness, why can't I think of the guy's name for the crew chief of the one? Bill Surgeon, thank you. They also deserve a ton of credit because they did a great job. And Josh mentioned earlier about Suarez. He had a great year this year. Really showed what a lot of people thought about Suarez, and that he's in a second year with an organization, which is very rare for him. He's been bouncing around a lot, not to any of his doing, just circumstances. But anyway, they did a great job this year, no question. I think that's something that the next gen car, that's a positive of it. And if you are somebody who likes going to the racetrack and you have really no idea who's going to be good from week to week, that's something that you want. And I do think in a way that's a positive for the sport for sure. And here's where my negatives will come in. I think part of my problem with this next gen is that I'm not sure it's as far as much it shows the talent of teams as much as we see a lot of more luck plays into things. And so, I'm not a big guy on liking to watch where luck sort of plays in a bigger role. And I think that's part of my problem. You also, you guys mentioned about the safety, and NASCAR is going to look at it, but they also built this car. They're also the ones who are responsible, in my opinion, for why we need to make changes to this car. So will they get it right with this new, adjustment they're going to make to this back end of this car? We'll see. You can't have guys wrecking cars with very little accidents. I mean, Kurt Busch's career is over because of a listen, no doubt they go fast at Pocono, but that was a very normal looking accident, to say the least, for Kurt Busch and even Alex Bowman. And the problem with Busch you could say was, oh, he's a veteran, he's taken hits before we had safer barriers, before we had safer race cars, and you could sort of sit there and say maybe those lingering effects from his early hits in his career is really what played a role into ending his career per se. You can't say that about Alex Bowman, though. You couldn't say that about Alex Bowman. He's been with he's a newer driver, and so that was a major problem. I felt that the package we had for these short tracks was a problem. I didn't like that at all. So and we also had fires, which was another problem, into itself, and then wheels falling off at times or breaking off at times. So, and no doubt, I think certain things can be looked at. I thought Chase Elliott had the line of the year when he said, I think it was Justin Marks said, hey, we're going to have some issues with this car. We knew coming in we were going to have issues, but Chase Elliott said with the technology we have, there's no reason to take a step back in safety. And he was absolutely correct. He had a grand slam, game-winning ninth inning with the down 3 with the bases loaded, got a 3-2 count, got a hanging curveball, and just slammed it about 600 feet into the stands. that comment. There was no question. That is 100% correct. And that's really what my biggest problem with this next-gen car was. I felt, and again, maybe people will tell me I'm wrong with this, I felt this car was built for cost. I think, Steve Phelps touched on it in his State of the Sport this week, where he said, we're looking at owners and the future of this sport and really trying to cut back the costs. That's a big thing about it. Sure, they want to add to their revenue, but NASCAR doesn't want to add to their revenue too much. They want these teams to limit their spending. And where this started from, I think this Gen 7 car started from, was limiting the owner's costs. I don't care what anybody says. He can tell me until he's blue in the face that this car was the number one goal of this car was safety. I'd call him, I think he's full of crap, to be honest with you. This was about building a car that for these owners and for these teams, at 15 years down the road, we can look at it and say these owners are making money. And I think these owners are making money anyway, but I think they want to make as much money as they possibly can as far as what other sports make, where you're seeing baseball teams or, Washington Commanders coming for sale, and it's going to be billions and billions of dollars. I think that's what these owners, these team owners, want to get to eventually, where if you have to sell a charter, it's going to cost you a significant amount of money. That's why Dale Earnhardt Jr. can't get into it. And it's not a coincidence that Dale Earnhardt Jr. wants to get the Cup now with this new car, because he knows that this new car is a lot cheaper and you don't have to pay as much people to build this new car and all that goes into it. He knows that. He's not a dumb person. He's financially smart. So he knows that this is the year to get in. This is why you want to get in, because this new car is going to allow you to make not only a lot of money, but major, major money. And that's why these charters, you're not going to see them be sold. And I think the only way a new owner gets in, and I don't mean to go on to a completely different avenue, but the only way you'll see a new owner get in is if what you see with like Pitbull, where you buy into a team, or Jimmie Johnson, like we saw this week. You buy into a team, you get into a team. That's where these new owners are going to come from. Where we're used to in the NASCAR world, in our world, where new owners would be basically running their own team, you're going to see, I think, owners buy into teams and be part of teams. And that's an interesting change, which is something that is there. But as far as the racing is concerned, and I'll wrap this up here. I know I want a little bit of a rant here. But as far as the racing is concerned, my problem is that I think it's, again, a lot of it's luck based, and I would love to see them open up the horsepower. And it drives me crazy because they put these engines in to, I think, a lot of the reason was, and maybe there's other reasons, but I think the biggest reason was to woo manufacturer into NASCAR, another manufacturer into the sport, which makes a ton of sense, by the way, to do that. But we're not seeing any progress. I mean, they were apparently close to this, last year, 2 years ago, they reported, NASCAR is close to adding manufacturer. Now there's nowhere close. It seems like the talks with Dodge, for whatever reason, fizzled out, and now we're gone. So what are we doing here with these engines? I mean, that's to be honest. If why we created this engine package was to sort of help a manufacturer get in here and establish something, what the hell are we doing now if these manufacturers don't want to come in anyway? Let's just open up the horsepower, bring the racing back to where it should be, where we see cars, to me would be a huge win if we did that with the engines. But, we'll see. But overall, I think it was a much more competitive year. But it doesn't reward, I don't think, the greatness or the talent. It's more of a lot of luck per se. And if you hit on something for a week, you're in good shape, you're going to totally win races. It's just, maybe as a race fan, as a NASCAR fan, I was thinking about this tonight on my drive. I did some driving today. I was thinking about this and I said, I wonder if I have to change my mentality of it's over. What I think of NASCAR and what I grew up as, it's done. You have to change your mentality a little bit. So maybe over the years I'll come to like this new car, but overall I think it's changed the game to where it's no longer that big of a team sport as far as what goes on, Monday through Friday at the race shop. That's gone, and the pit crews for the most part is gone because of the single lug. So it is what it is. But again, I think as far as the parity was concerned, if that was part of the goal, we certainly did that. I mean, you saw how many winners this year, and
19.
Right. So that's certainly something good. And like you said, Trackhouse, that's something that would not have happened with this older car. I mean, they might have been maybe be a little competitive, maybe a 15th to 10th place team. They would not have made the Final Four in that old car. There's no question about that. So that's certainly a positive and a good positive for this new car.
Yeah, I echo.
I just wanted to jump in to what
Go ahead, Josh.
Clayton said about the engine stuff, and Yeah, I don't buy that for a minute. That it's because they want to save or get the more manufacturers in. I think it's purely a competition thing. With going back to the old 550 package where they're trying to make things closer on the mile and a halves and the bigger tracks like Pocono, Michigan, and California. Yeah, this is to kind of like balance it out between 550 and 750 with the current 690 horsepower or whatever. And yeah, I agree. They should make it a lot more, 700 or 850, whatever. Because maybe financially for manufacturers to put in money to the engine program, maybe, but I think it's, purely to, create competition, and try to induce it. It's their way of creating parity by putting in lower horsepower. It's the same reason why we have restrictor plate racing. I think maybe part of it was because to keep them from flying into the stands, but it's really because it made things a whole lot quote unquote more exciting.
Yeah, and I think it's a good point with the horsepower. It's a similar thing that I see on the IndyCar side too, trying to bring in manufacturers, road going technology relevant to what the manufacturers are doing. I also say that, like, you think about Mopar and they're involved with Tony Stewart and NHRA, they have cars that have 900 horsepower, and a Cup car is 690 horsepower. So what is that relevant to something that they're doing on the road? Now, granted, I think Stellantis, who runs the Dodge and Ram and all this, but they also with Fiat and all these other brands, they have connections to IMSA and the World Endurance Championship and NHRA. So in terms of Dodge, they see NHRA as a cheaper alternative marketing-wise, and it also meets whatever thing they want. But they also have other things that they have in Europe that they can go and around the world that can go and meet those things. NASCAR costs too much to get into. To be competitive, it takes a long time, or you need to be with the right team. Toyota is proof of that, and Toyota's proven over time, over decades, and I've said this on your show when we used to be together, Clayton, Toyota has a history of destroying motorsport series. And to be honest, the charter system and certain things are in place to where the Cup Series ain't going anywhere. That's no problem. But if you look at what the Truck Series has become in the time since Toyota's been in it, which is 18 years, we look at what it was in 2004 and how many people were showing up for truck races to what it is now. And Toyota dominates the Truck Series, but who else is there? There ain't nobody there. In the Xfinity Series, Toyota has one team. That's Joe Gibbs Racing. Yeah, there's other teams that run. Sam Hunt kind of has a connection to it. Whatever. There's no real Ford presence. There's a huge Chevy presence, mainly because that's the most readily available. And Dale Jr. runs one of those teams, and that's a Hendrick outfit. That, at the end of the day, you want Honda to come into that. Honda's been in IndyCar for years, and they've been on and off getting their ass kicked by Chevy for, I don't know, since 2012 with this engine package. And they keep on adding things in IndyCar. They have the same car for 10 years, and they talk about cost. You want Honda to get in on this? There's no effing way that you're going to convince Honda to build a Ridgeline truck under the basis of how stupid these trucks are now, and to get them to make a V8 engine. Who are you going to get a V8 engine? You're sure as hell not going to trust Ilmor because they can't make a decent engine. They can't make a decent engine for trucks or ARCA. And Penske's in on it. All these people are in on it. You start going and getting in. Roger Penske's in on it with that crappy crate engine. Mike Helton doesn't have anything directly to do with NASCAR, but who builds the bodies for all these different series? 5-Star. Who's one of the big people at 5-Star? Frickin' Helton. Like, once you start, it's the same thing in politics, the same way our society is. Once you start looking at things and you start digging in, it's the way they all should wear their sponsorship jackets, the way that NASCAR drivers wear their uniform. All these people are connected in some way, shape, or form. It's not a cost-saving thing, whatever. SOD is one of the dumbest people on planet Earth, but he's a sword swallower. That's why he's where he is. Steve Phelps sits there and he likes to take arrows from everybody, and he just says whatever anybody wants to say. Because they already had BZF sitting there and his drug-induced rants, and he's going to go on the download, which is going to be something to see because he hasn't been out in public in a while. So who knows if he's actually going to be on or off script, whatever. But when you consider that since he took over this sport in 2004 to where we are in 2022, there's been exponential change. There was a push on safety. This car has been an absolute failure in that because it's essentially ended Kurt Busch's career, and it could have effects on other drivers because of the way they made the rear of the car and the way they have the case. They've encased the gear cluster relative to the gas tank and how rigid that section is. NASCAR, from when Clayton and I first started watching, the back end, if you went and owned a rear end, you went and slammed the back into the wall, you're crushing that thing all the way to the window. Now you bounce off the wall with a little bit of a bump, but the difference is the drivers are taking all of it, which is essentially what caused all the deaths 20 plus years ago with the basilar skull fractures through different types of incidents, a lot of head-on, but what brought on because of the rigidity of the cars, which is kind of, I can go off into the tangent with that way. That's a failure. The car on short tracks and road courses, which everyone said it was supposed to be made for road courses, failure. The tires are not, it's typical Goodyear. They don't know how to make a good tire. We already know that. You listen to the show long enough, I don't trust them to make a good tire. They can make a tire that can wear and also last. If they can do it on the road, supposedly, they can do it on a freaking race car. They haven't proven to do that well in NASCAR, but they're in cahoots with the Frances, so they're never going to get fired. The fact is they need a better tire. I don't care that it's a single lug and it's a big rim. It's more road relevant than a 13-inch rim and whatever tire that they were using before. That's more road relevant. I understand why they're doing that. They need to figure out why, especially on the Ford side, why they're having all this tire pickup right next to the exhaust manifolds catching fire. Because it's cost multiple people cars. It cost Chase Briscoe a top 5 finish at Richmond. Brad's car caught on fire yesterday. I mean, it's ridiculous. And there's a list. I forget which website. The two guys on the one website, they make all kinds of good lists. They made that penalty list for people who hooked other people. Now they did a list for all the people who caught on fire this year. So the next gen car has that issue with the way they have the packaging of the exhaust relative to where like the rubber and all that. There needs to be another like barrier so that the rubber buildup doesn't get into the wheel wells. I was joking around with a friend of mine. He's like, you might as well just spray WD-40 all up in the wheel wells and then you wouldn't have that problem. But then they probably say it's illegal anyway. I bet you that Brad probably wanted to do that with RFK, but then they would have failed him for that too. But I think it was good on 1.5 mile racetracks, which is, I think, what they're trying to fix. But you can run 1,000 horsepower. You run 1,000 horsepower on any track up to 1.5 miles or up to 1.25 miles and road courses. Then the 1.5 mile racetracks, 2 mile racetracks, the super speedways, you run your specific packages. Fine. At that point, you don't have to do any aero thing. I would say take the back, the rear diffuser off the car on short tracks and road courses. Test it, see it. I mean, we already have Jess and Mark saying we should run 5 to 6 cars at Charlotte at 1,000 horsepower and see how that would be. If one of the owners in the Final Four thinks that that's an idea, maybe they ought to do that. Just saying. So the car has its pluses. They are going to do new things next year. They're going to run a street course race for what it's worth next year for whatever effing reason. They're going to still be on dirt. They're going to still have all these unique scenarios. They're going to run North Wilkesboro next year for the All-Star race on a very old surface. They need to figure out these things if they want this car to progress and keep fans. That's what it is. The old school fans, the people that have been in it a long time, the way out there's the boomers. I mean, we're neither here nor there. But if you're looking at Clayton and myself, who have been into this thing for 25 plus years, as fans, that's who you need to keep. You need to keep us, like all of us, because Josh, you're younger, but still, you've been in it a long time. We're the people you need to keep, not the short attention span people. And so we'll see about all that. We'll get into the Xfinity thing here. Of course, with the news that Ty Gibbs he wins the championship. His father passes away right next day, which is just sad and horrible. But for Ty Gibbs, over his career, he's proven to be a very tough competitor, for better or worse. He's gotten into a lot of people. He has shown a general lack of awareness in regards to his how he behaves or how he does things. The notion is going into what will be his rookie year next year in the Cup Series, 11 wins, 25 top fives, 33 top tens, and 6 poles. And, I mean, he only ran just over half the races last year and finished 13th in points. This year, only slightly improved average finish. But, he 16 top fives and 23 top tens in 33 races. It's hard to get around. It's hard to beat. He beat 3 junior motorsports guys. All of them during the day figured out a way to eliminate themselves. Josh Berry on a late restart got out in the gray and hit the wall. Justin Allgaier ran his tires off his car, tried to slide him, couldn't do it. And then Noah Gragson had to come back. All 3 junior motorsports cars had issues on pit road during this race, and that was a key. Gibbs had the pole, or had the first spot on pit road. Good pit stops all day. He led the most laps. He had the fastest car. Even when he was in traffic, he wasn't really in trouble. It really wasn't much of a factor. The top 3 were the top 3 in this championship, so it's not that shocking. They led the majority of the race, all but 14 of the 200 laps. So 186 of the 200 laps led by those 3 guys. So that championship, it isn't as shocking. I mean, yeah, Gibbs had his moments, struggled at times during this season, but in the grand scheme of things, Ty Gibbs goes out there, wins the last 2 races of the season. He hadn't won since Michigan in August, and then Gragson had kind of set the tone. He had won 5 races since that point. Allmendinger had won twice. Berry had won once. And but Allgaier, that's an interesting thing. But I'll throw to you, Clayton, before you get off here. Ty Gibbs, I mean, it's a bigger situation for him now that he's now lost his father. But, to win a championship, make his dad proud, a pretty big deal for him in a time where he was under a lot of scrutiny for his actions and the way he's gone about business.
Yeah, no question. And, he was able to step up in a big moment and pull off a victory. You got to give him credit, especially with, like you said, the distraction of, and I think part of the idea behind a lot of people calling him out was that it was sort of a distraction. They wanted him to be distracted and, focused on the task at hand. And he went out and pretty much whooped him. I mean, I know Gragson and Allgaier kind of had a little bit of they led a little bit and they were right there, second and third. But Ty was pretty much in control of that race all day. And I know probably Joe Gibbs could put all their emphasis on that 54 car to win a championship and use the other teams to do that. But, I know for a fact there was some, and not to get too, with everything that was going on, but I know for a fact there was some internal problems there with Toyota and even Joe Gibbs Racing. So for him to put that away and kind of just put it in the back of his mind for a race and win that championship is great. And, as much as people might not like Ty Gibbs, with what happened on Sunday morning or Saturday night, whenever it happened, you have to feel great for him that he was able to win the championship, and that was really the last thing his dad saw was his son win a championship. So, and celebrate a championship with his son. The world works in mysterious ways, and for Ty to go out and win that championship the way he did, it certainly was it was storybook, and there was a deeper reason behind it. But for him to step up in the way he did with all that was going on, was really, really something I think shows how good he is as a race car driver for sure.
And Josh, I mean, we go and contrast that to what Junior Motorsports had going into this race on Saturday. You have 75% of the Final Four. You have Sam Mayer, who of course has a obvious beef with Ty Gibbs, and okay, so there you go. So we'll go thank Clayton Caldwell for his contribution. Has to get to being dad and get ready for work. But we have to contrast with the response that Junior Motorsports had this weekend. Allgaier's been good at Phoenix over time. Many races there, had chances to win. Gregson won there earlier this year. You have Josh Berry, who's great at flat, shorter tracks. And then Mayer, who made it the most interesting of anything at the end. He kind of held up Gibbs there coming to the white flag and could have right-reared him and made it really fun. But in the end, Junior Motorsports, with 75% of the field, were not able to beat Ty Gibbs, and it really wasn't much of a fight, to be fair. That 54 car was on rails. Ty Gibbs wanted to prove that he belongs. Doesn't have to run over people, even though he's made a career out of it. But in the end, Noah Gragson has to go and eat one for sure. He's the one that was the most outspoken of the bunch, and he had to eat it for sure. 8 wins this year, similar to what Chase Briscoe had a couple of years ago, winning 9 races in 2020. But when it came down to it, they came up small when it really counted.
Yeah, I mean, Noah Gragson, he came up short. He had provided a lot of bulletin board material with the talk that he had on his media availability leading up to the race. And I'm not gonna say he was wrong for saying it. I think he's playing the heel card a little bit, but also just trying to, I guess, be himself in a way. But it maybe, looking back on it now, maybe it wasn't the best idea to put that out there like that. But he's going to be who he is and, say exactly what is on his mind. And I think that's why, a lot of people like him now. And, it seemed like a lot of people reacted positively in favor of Gragson after those comments were made. But, on the race on Sunday, I think it's just a matter of who had the better car that weekend. Because, looking back at what Gragson did in the spring at Phoenix, he ran pretty well there and won the race, but things change, and he took over kind of because it was Ty Gibbs' series earlier in the season. Remember, he was winning a bunch, and then he kind of fell off in the middle of the summer, and Gragson started to emerge, and we thought that maybe Noah Gragson was the guy in the Xfinity series, but Gragson just came up short there in Phoenix, and I think Gibbs, after the whole playoff steal, Gibbs and Ty Gibbs, they, I guess, came out with the best piece that they could come up with, and he was the best car the whole day. And I think maybe at the end Gragson might have been able to catch him. Maybe if he had 5-10 more laps, could have been there. But Gragson tried to send it in there in the last lap, but I think you really got to be within 2 to even, or 1/10 a car length or whatever, to really be able to close in and put the bumper there to move him over out of the way, or just to try to attempt some kind of pass. And I think he was never that close enough to be able to make that kind of move. And he got a little assistance there 2 laps ago from his teammate Sam Mayer. Sam kind of pinched Gibbs, off of turn 2 onto the backstretch, but he couldn't do anything more than that, because one, he's already got a slower car, and then the other thing is as well, you can't affect the race like that, because then it'd be pretty obvious. You can only really have one shot there to maybe help your teammate and affect the race in a type of way. But Ty Gibbs just had a way better car than anybody from Junior Motorsports. So even though Gregson and Allgaier, Barry all led laps at some point, it was at different points of the race, and when it counted the most, Ty Gibbs just had the better car and just beat them straight up. So sometimes that's how you got to do it, and that's how it happens. So Ty Gibbs, of course, wins the championship, and then with the stuff that happened afterwards with his family and his father passing away. Obviously, it's unfortunate, and maybe people are talking about the thing that would humble Ty Gibbs, and maybe this is the thing that humbles him. Maybe he doesn't have to get wrecked or put in the wall or whatever for what he does on the racetrack. Maybe this is his opportunity, to be a better person, race car driver. Now that his father passed away, and that kind of thing. So. Sometimes I don't know. Sometimes it takes those kind of events in your life to really change, and maybe honor your father, that kind of thing, to change and be a better person. But I don't think Noah Gragson or anything like that. He obviously said comments and he doesn't like him, thinks he's a fake person, all that stuff. But I don't think he'd want to see that happen to anybody, regardless of how you view somebody. That's like the saying goes, you wouldn't wish that on your worst enemy, and I think even Noah Gragson could agree with that. So just a unfortunate situation. Now we're going to see who's going to be the eventual successor to Joe Gibbs, and in the future for Gibbs Racing. So just a unfortunate situation, and crazy that it happened like that. And I think also it's interesting that Coy Gibbs and his brother JD both passed away at the same age, and now Joe Gibbs has to put to rest both of his sons at a relatively young age. So and now he's has to find the successor. So just a really unfortunate situation, of course, and our thoughts and prayers and everything go out to their family, and as they go through this situation. So they just unfortunate that it went down like that, but at least Ty Gibbs got to win the championship, and they got to celebrate that as a family before on the unfortunate passing of Coy Gibbs.
Yeah, it's just horrible. As somebody who lost his father at a relatively young age, albeit he was 62. It's been, what is it now, coming up to this year, it'll be 14 years since I lost my dad. And Ty Gibbs, for whatever the hell he is, this isn't the time to go in on him. We kind of did it last week, and we're probably going to get into it next year when he gets put in the wall a lot. Because I don't think he's learned as a driver. But hopefully the fact that he doesn't have his father, and he has to become a man and be a better man and be a better person for his mom and for his grandma and grandpa and for his siblings. Maybe that humbles him. Maybe that makes him a better person. Maybe that makes him a better race car driver. This dude has talent. It's undeniably his talent. To win 11 Xfinity races in such a short amount of time, to be able to win a championship in only his second season. You've won 11 out of 51 races, and that's just really good. I mean, to win over one out of every five races so far in your career. His Cup career has not been great so far. Only one top 10, average finish of 23, but getting 15 races of experience is huge. Back in the day, there were drivers that wouldn't get 5 races. Tony had no races before he started. Jeff Gordon only had 1. I think Jimmie Johnson had 2. And you're talking about 3 of the greatest guys of our, previous generation here. Drivers won't get more than 5 races. Kyle Busch, I think, had 5 races before he jumped into a Cup car. the thing about, like Joey Logano was in and out of different cars. He drove the 96 Hall of Fame racing car when he was a rookie before he got in the 20 car in 2009. Brad Keselowski drove for James Finch in the Mikasugi casino car. So, I mean, you just think about great drivers in the past. They only drove 5 races before they jumped into a cup car. This guy's already got 3 times as many races in a different car. Granted, he didn't do much, but going out there under duress, winning a championship, and then on top of it, what has transpired post that, we will see what Ty Gibbs brings to the table come the clash in the LA Coliseum here in 3 months' time. Yeah, essentially. Yeah, it's 3 months' time because it'll be in February. Before we be remiss, we go through the rundown. Gibbs, Gregson, Allgaier, Landon Castle, best finish of the season for him in 4th. AJ Allmendinger finishes 5th in his last full-time race for Colleague in an Xfinity car. He'll be a Cup car driver next year. He had a great run yesterday. Sheldon Creed finishes 6th. He's going to be back next year for RCR with Whelen Engineering. Riley Herb 7th. Daniel Hemrick 8th. Had a good weekend in general. Needed more of those, and he might have been in the mix. Austin Hills, your Xfinity Series Rookie of the Year. Sammy Smith led 10 laps. I think he's going to be a factor next year in the Xfinity Series. Nick Sanchez for the what's that team? Why am I forgetting the team name? The 48 team. They qualified
Machine
third.
Racing.
Big Machine Racing. Thank you, man. He's going to be running a truck next year, but honestly, I thought he was going to be in the 48 car. I think that was, as much as I like Parker Kligerman, I think if Scott Borchetto was trying to build a future and possibly get in the Cup, you'd want to build with a guy like Nick Sanchez, maybe hedge with, I don't know, Rajah Caruth. But I'm kind of thinking Rajah Caruth is going to be driving for Alpha Prime next year. Honestly hope that Rajah and Stephen Parsons are the drivers next year full time for that organization, because both those guys were the 2 best drivers they had the whole entire season. I mean, I'll say Sage Karam did some work in those cars, but I think Our Motorsports is probably going to want his money. They're going to have him and Parker Retzlaff. They might keep Anthony Alfredo so they can have 3 cars. Kind of foreshadowing or trying to foreshadow Xfinity next year. I don't know if Sage Karam wants to run a full schedule, though. Might be an idea for him and his Nazareth buddy Marco Andretti to go and hedge with a car that has points and kind of split the ride. Might be an idea. Defending SRX champion there. Josh Berry 13th. Kyle Weatherman finishes out the year for the Jesse Uji team, gets a top 15 finish. Jeb Burton gets into the top 20 in owners points. Rajah Caruth finishes 17th. And you go through that. Kaz Gralla, Stephen Parsons. Dawson Cram was in the 13 car, former guest of the GSP, driving for I was hoping he was going to go make his presence felt there, but he didn't, unfortunately. Xfinity Series, trying to see if there's any other news there other than, Brandon Bruckshot Jones is going to be in the 9 car next year with Menards as a sponsor, which isn't a surprise to anybody, which is why that Brass Pro Shops will be on the 8 car. Whelen Engineering will be on the 2 car next year for Sheldon Creed in his second season. In his second season in trucks, he won the championship, so we'll see if that's what comes through this time. Truck Series race, the Lucas Oil 150 saw Zane Smith lead the most laps, win both stages, get maximum points. They went to an overtime, but he ends up getting the victory and finally getting a championship. He's essentially Ford's future in NASCAR as things stand. We got him, or I say we, as I'm with Ford, but Ford got him from Chevrolet since he was a part of GMS. And I think he probably had a connection to Toyota, but I think he was with Chevy, but he might have had a connection with Toyota. But Zane Smith, Front Row Motorsports, a team that has been an also-ran team in their history, ran a litany of drivers over the past 2 decades in this sport. Bob Jenkins is a champion in NASCAR. Chris Lawson is a champion crew chief. And Zane Smith is, after 2 consecutive runner-up finishes in the Truck Series Championship, he will be the defending Truck Series champion with a chance to defend his title while running Cup and Xfinity starts next year, with the likely scenario of being in a Cup car in 2024, Josh. Domination, I think I have to go into my picks here. So I did pick Zane Smith. Look at that. There you go. Neither of us picked Keebler. Okay, whatever. I was wrong. Yeah. We're both wrong on Cup. We're both wrong on Xfinity. You were close because Chandler Smith finished 3rd. So the only one that we got right, I picked the winner, and Corey Heim won Rookie of the Year. Corey Heim finished 7th in the last race. So the Kyle Busch Motorsports trucks finished 3rd, 4th, and 7th in their last race with Toyota. Zane Smith, Ben Rhodes, the defending series champion, had a chance. His teammate, Ty Majeski, wrecked, trying to make a move that would have gotten himself in position. He won 2 races in the round of 8, but he didn't have a truck to win on Friday. Probably cost Ben Rhodes a chance to win that championship there because he was on 2 tires relative to Zane Smith, Chandler Smith's 4. John Hunter Nemechek 4th. Stuart Friesen 5th. Grant Enfinger finished 6th. Corey Heim, Tanner Gray, and their David Gilliland's last race with Ford finished 8th. Caden Honeycutt gets a top 10 finish, and Carson Hocevar rounds out the top 10. Lane Riggs started 2nd for Friesen's team. Hopefully they get money for him to run because he's legit. He has ton of talent. He won the NASCAR All-American national title this year. So that speaks to how good he is and how good his team and everything was for him to win a national championship there. Lane Riggs, the son of Scott, every time he's jumped into the 62, that second truck for Friesen has done work. But before we get into the news of trucks, Josh, we have to get into the fact that Zane Smith, after 2 years as a runner-up, possibly not having a job, he is essentially Ford's future in NASCAR. One of the pieces. I mean, you already have a few pieces there with Cindric Briscoe up in the Cup Series. But other than that, Ford don't really have a whole hell of a lot up there. I mean, Blaney. Sorry, you have to include Blaney, and to a lesser extent, Joey Logano, even though he's only 32. But Ford doesn't really have a whole lot of youth. I mean, I guess Chris Buescher is kind of young, but they need to have other young guys. They've let a lot of people go over the years, but Zane Smith winning this race, getting out of hibernation, is huge for Ford. Not just for this championship, but in general.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think with Zane Smith, he just is kind of the same situation with Joey Logano on Sunday. He had one of the best cars in the field, started on pole, and won the truck race and won the championship. And it was really his race throughout the whole thing. He just needed to execute at the end, and I think on 4 tires he had the best car. And at the end, with Ben Rhodes kind of diverted and went on 2 tires, and it actually almost worked until Ty Majeski spun out off of turn 2, trying too hard, trying to get around Zay Smith on a kind of a Hail Mary move almost, kind of, and spun himself out there. But I think Ty Majeski just didn't have the car, but he was damn gonna try something to get around Zane Smith. But I think Ben Rhodes probably could have been the championship winner again if that caution didn't happen. I think he was getting ready to settle in, and his tires were kind of beginning to even out compared to Zane Smith trying to drive up there and get the lead. And I think just a matter of misfortune for Ben Rhodes and Zane Smith, or versus Zane Smith, who had good fortune with that caution, gives him another chance to go up there and take the lead, which he did. And from there it was his race. Going back to the caution in this race with Haley Deegan, getting in the wall pretty hard. It looked like Zane Smith was probably going to drive away from this, and might have if that caution hadn't happened. And Chandler Smith just didn't have the he led 9 laps compared to Zane Smith leading 77, just didn't have quite the pace that he needed to be able to get up into the lead and race Zane Smith. Maybe there was a chance on the final set of restarts, but Chandler Smith just didn't have the pace that he needed to go out and win this championship. But Zane Smith, been one of the best drivers in the Truck Series this season, if not the best. And now he's a truck champion. Now Bob Jenkins owns the championship after years of kind of being a starting park, in NASCAR, and had a little bit of success in Cup. But of course, here in this effort, this is truly a championship winning team now in the Truck Series, and at least the trucks, you can count on them to be able to contend as long as they have good drivers. So we'll see what their future looks like for them. Also Zane Smith, you said he's for his future, and I do wonder where Zane Smith is going to be in 2023. Is he still going to compete in the trucks, or did he end up going into the
he's going to be full time in the Truck Series. They've already announced it. So what the deal is, they're going to run full time to defend their championship, but he's going to run XFinity programs somewhere. They haven't said anything, which, considering where Ford's stuff is, and he's going to run limited Cup. They're going to run limited Cup races, at least 5 Cup races, including an attempt at the Daytona 500.
Right. And that's really the question is not necessarily the immediate future of, okay, yes, he's going to be in the Truck Series next year, but then also, okay, well, where's the the future of his career going into the Xfinity Series, and where is he going to be? Does he switch from? I mean, Ford would be stupid to let him go or let him leave, and go to another manufacturer. But if the situation comes up and he feels like there's a better future at another team or another manufacturer, like say Junior Motorsports or even a Toyota team, does he make that move and go up into the Cup, or does he stay with Ford, potentially Stuart Haas? Or
I think that's where he's going. Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Before honestly, between you and me and whoever the heck listens to this deal, I think he's the favorite to drive the 4 car in 2024.
Yeah,
that's
reasonable.
That's a thought bomb that nobody wants to think about. I think Ryan Preece is a part of their future at Stuart Haas, but he's not going to be in the 4 car.
He'll be in the 10 probably.
In the 10, and then the 4 car will be Zane Smith. And if Stewart and Haas decide to separate, then they will decide on, the 4 and the 14 are going to be, I would assume, be Tony's, or they would say the 4 goes to Gene, and then the 14 and the 10 go to Tony, and then the 4 and the 41 go to Gene. The reality is, if Ford is serious, it's either he's going to a big team, meaning he's going to Stuart Haas, he's either going to the Woods and driving the 21 car, or he's going to drive for Brad at RFK, because one of them is going to buy a charter, or they're going to keep him within that system. Or the other thing, which is also very likely, they tell Michael McDowell to eat it, and he drives a 34 car, and it's him and Todd Gilliland, which probably isn't that bad of a decision either.
Yep.
I didn't think that we're stopped. Yeah, I thought you were going to have more there.
No,
So,
I don't really have anything else, but yeah, I mean,
but
we'll see where he goes in the future, I guess.
So, I mean, I guess the other discussion is JHN. You know, Rhodes is going to stay in trucks. He's not leaving. We've kind of came to the conclusion he's never leaving the truck series. Chandler Smith's going to Colleague and probably going to be the replacement for AJ Allmendinger in the Cup Series eventually. Lost from Toyota there. But I think John Hunter Nemechek, I mean, Corey Himes in the Toyota program for sure. Along with Tanner Gray, they swiped him from Ford. But John Hunter Nemechek and Lane Riggs, after this past weekend at Phoenix, those are the two prospects that are out there. I mean, the Truck Series, we're not going to know what the Truck Series really looks like in regards to who's going to compete for a championship. I mean, we're going to get into a little bit with Kyle Busch Motorsports, but in regards to John Hunter Nemechek, he was the next guy for 2311. Is he going to Xfinity? Is he going for Sam Hunt? Is he going to go to Joe Gibbs? Do they have the funding to run him in the Xfinity program? We know Sammy Smith is probably going to be there because he has the Pilot Flying J money there that funded Michael Annett, and Michael Annett's a part of his deal there. And then Lane Riggs, son of a driver who used to be in NASCAR's Big 3 Series, made a career, but he's trying to make it on merit. Will he get the support? Those are the two guys I think we need to talk about. What is John Hunter going to do? He hedged. He went back to Toyota. He was at Front Row Motorsports, mind you, a couple of years ago driving a Cup car. And he won bad. But he went back and he's like, I want to compete for trophies. And he gave away a Truck Series championship last year. And this year gave away a chance to win a Truck Series championship before the Final Four. What is John Hunter Nemechek? That's the real question. What is he? Is he next? Is he somebody that can be a champion in the Cup level? Do we really think he can win one? I mean, his dad was able to beat some legends way back when and win a championship with a family-owned organization. But John Hunter has won races, but he's also made decisions and done things that make you wonder if he's the kind of guy that can close. But Toyota thinks he can close. But how far are they going to go to show you that they can close, let alone another guy who's the son of a former driver? What can Lane Riggs bring to the table? I personally think if Friesen knew what was good for him, he'd put him in the 52 and let him run for the championship. And Friesen can go and run his dirt modifieds and win championships too. That would make more sense for HFR. But that's my thing. That's my bias, mainly because I think Stuart Friesen's a cocksucker. But what do you think about those two guys?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, John Hunter Nemechek, I mean, what's the future for him? And, could he be in a Gibbs car next year in Xfinity? He's proved himself, I think I don't see him, being in the Truck Series anymore, because I think any more seasons where he's running for a Truck Series championship is probably, wasted years, wasting his talent. But, in Xfinity, could they put him in a car in Joe Gibbs Racing, or is he, farmed out to the satellite, or at least another Toyota team with Sam Hunt, at least for the near future? And, does he stay in that car for a year, and then possibly, with 2311, they've talked about expanding, to 4 teams or at least 3 teams, and already he's, put himself as one of the subs for that team. Of course, he was supposed to be the original sub for Kurt Busch before they put in Ty Gibbs, and also he's subbed for Bubba Wallace at Homestead this year. So he's probably on the short list should 2311 decide to expand in 2024. He could be a guy that's in that car. So we'll have to see. But I think Toyota sees the type of talent that he has, and I think they know that they're probably been criticized a lot for the talent that they've let go, and now they need to figure out how to keep some of the talent that they have on their side. Of course, they're acquiring talent, most notably in the Cup Series with Tyler Reddick going to Toyota with 2311 there. So, they have a chance to, continue to keep talent, add on talent. So, we'll have to see. But yeah, I think John Hunter, he's proved himself enough in Xfinity to be there full time. I think at least for a year, waiting on a car, to open up for him in the Cup Series. But that's what I see for him in the future. And I just go back to him being able to run, with Ty Gibbs at Richmond. You had a chance to win there, so I don't understand why they wouldn't put him in an Xfinity Series car full time in 2023.
Yeah, and I mean, what did you think about Lean Riggs before? I mean, we have a couple other things. I guess we'll go from there. So, Jimmie Johnson joining Petty GMS as an owner, and he's going to be running limited races. So coming back to NASCAR is a big deal. 7-time champion joining another 7-time champion.
Should run the 49 car next year.
Yeah, that would be something. Yeah, 7x7. Yeah, but he also drove the 44 in ASA, which is why, and is also a Petty number over time.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting. Yeah, 7 times. I'll always be 49. That would be an interesting play on the champions there, and nobody really runs that 49 car ever since. The only time I remember that was when the BAM racing team ran 49. But other than that, I don't really remember anyone running that number. That would be an interesting one. I never thought about that, so that's credit to you. So if they run that, then they better give you credit. But Jimmie coming back to NASCAR, trying to make the Daytona 500 after a couple of years away. Brand new car for him to drive compared to being in the Gen 6, driving for a different organization. Will Hendrick have any connection to them since they're an RCR outfit? GMS and Petty have had RCR connections. Will they decide to go to Hendrick for engines? I mean, albeit Hendrick makes their engine program and RCR, I think Chevy has basically combined their programs. So essentially the engine program's the same, but in regards to building cars, the Project 91 deal, I saw that on Twitter where Justin Marks was saying, oh, it's Kimi's car. But I think in regards to what they want to do with it and what everybody's saying, and nobody really knows for sure, we figure Elio is going to drive that car at Daytona for the 500, which is something considering he's never driven a stock car before, other than probably the Brazilian stock car series, which is on road courses. How that would all work out. And, but, I think Kimi Räikkönen, we haven't heard anything from him since he ran at Watkins Glen. So the notion that it's his car, I guess we'll find out at COTA in March when they run there, if it's his car for sure or not, at a track where he has won in a Formula One car. And they put on an interesting race there last year or this year in the Cup Series car in the dry with the Gen 7. Tony was in the booth while Briscoe was leading the race, and then that went to hell. And then the other piece of news in regards to the trucks before we move on to the roundup is Kyle Busch Motorsports. They're going to run Chase Purdy full-time in the 4 truck. They will run Jack Wood for 10 out of the 23 races. And then essentially we would probably think that they're going to run other guys. Austin Dillon's already said he wants to drive a race. I forget Jimmie Johnson. They mentioned that Jimmie Johnson might drive a race in Kyle Busch 51. Of course, Jimmie Johnson's never won a Truck Series race, so he'd add his name to the names of people who have won in all 3 series. So he wants that, I'm pretty sure. And then Nick Sanchez, the defending ARCA Series champion with Rev Racing, will be connected to Kyle Busch Motorsports and making their debut in the Truck Series. So essentially what was the 18 truck will be that team. Who's left from Kyle Busch Motorsports after this Chevy deal and who's going to be running anything, we don't know. But what were your thoughts on all the news items, but specifically Jimmie Johnson coming back to NASCAR as a car owner, leaving the door open to run other opportunities, of course, and then the Kyle Busch Motorsports announcement with who he's going to bring into the fold for 2023?
Yeah, obviously, I think the big news, well, of course, is Jimmie Johnson becoming an owner, part owner in Petty GMS, and yeah, I mean that. I don't think anybody saw that one coming. That was out of left field. But I guess the situation kind of came out of the similarities with the agents. They both, so Jimmie Johnson and Eric Jones have the same agent apparently, and I guess Jimmie was looking for some opportunities, and his owner or his agent came with a idea and was able to kind of formulate an idea of potentially coming with the ownership plan, and they were able to go and convince GMS and Petty to buy a stake into the team, and it's a interesting development. We'll see with what Jimmie's able to do as an owner, and it kind of follows the trends like we were talking about earlier with drivers becoming owners or part owners of a team. Of course, Denny Hamlin, Brad Keselowski becoming team owners. Tony Stewart, of course, was already a team owner from a long time ago, but it's seemingly is becoming a trend now that I think all the drivers from previous generation who they are either recently retired or have already been past retired. I think they see the state I think that NASCAR is in right now, and with there's owners, of course, who are getting older and aging out, I guess, and on the other hand, you have opportunity to potentially make money with we talked about it earlier with this next gen car and the costs and everything. There's an opportunity there, so I think the drivers see ownership, whether it's current owner drivers like Hamlin and Keselowski, or like Stewart or Johnson, being retired and being owners. Maybe this is the way of them being stewards of the sport and being able to lead the sport in a direction, in a healthy direction. We'll see if that comes out. But on the other hand, he's also gonna do a part-time driving schedule, which is gonna be interesting. Of course, he says he's gonna attempt the Daytona 500, which did not think he would actually attempt a restrictor plate race ever again. But I don't see him as kind of a restrictor plate guy, but he's had success in the Daytona 500 before.
Two-time Daytona 500 winner.
Yep, and he swept Daytona as well in 2013. He's also been a winner in Talladega on a couple of occasions, and he's definitely somebody that could win again. And if he wins again, like, what does he do? Does he just decide, okay, we're going full time, kind of like Helio Castroneves, like we thought he was done in IndyCar outside of the Indianapolis 500 in the month of May, but then he goes and wins the 500 in 2021 and says, okay, I'm
next
coming
year
back.
He becomes I'm coming back. He's still fine if he decides, at age 47, and if they have a charter, it makes sense.
Yeah, so we'll see if that happens, which would be really interesting because, we all thought, I guess, maybe be a proper retirement tour for him, because, we saw 2020, of course, was supposed to be his original retirement tour, and then COVID happened, and he didn't really have the send-off, I guess, at every race that most of the drivers who have retired in the last couple of years have gotten, except for the final race at Phoenix, I think, and then, now he's going to have a chance to potentially run multiple races part-time. We'll see how it goes, and we'll see what kind of muscle I guess he has left in him as a racer, besides the Daytona 500, because I don't think that's going to really take like a whole lot of driving talent per se. It's going to take a lot of mental talent and patience to be able to stay up there and potentially win that one. But as far as other races that he may attempt, we're going to see how he handles this next gen car. Does he have some kind of advantage because he was in an Indy car? The open wheel, the similarities between this open wheel car and the NASCAR car are not all that different now. And, of course, we've seen, guys like Marco, well, not Marco because he raced in Xfinity, but, Connor Daly, and then, other guys that have raced in F1 like Kimi and Daniel Kvyat, all of those guys coming from open wheel cars to NASCAR. Now Jimmie potentially running, in this car after having 2 years of open wheel experience, could actually give him a little bit of an advantage as far as the learning curve to learning this next gen car. So that's going to be interesting to see. So we'll see on that front how it goes. And of course, sponsorship. Does Carvana decide to come to the Cup Series? He still has that deal with Ally, but they're also sponsoring full time for Alex Bowman. So wonder how that's going to work out, or if it's going to be more of a personal deal for him there. And then also, on other fronts that you talked about with Project 91, I think we have to assume Elio is going to be in the 500 for Daytona, and then we'll see where Kimi Räikkönen decides to attempt his next race. Does he decide to go to an oval or something like that? Of course, he was already kind of hurt after his crash back in August. I think he was wearing a wrist splint or something on his left or right hand, and maybe there's an injury there. So we'll have to see how he weighs out his options for that, and where does he decide to race, and if he goes to an oval, or if he goes to another road course on the schedule. We'll have to see. There's a street race in Chicago next year. Maybe, with F1 has had street races. Of course, Monaco is the most famous street race. Does he decide to attempt Chicago or something like that? We'll have to see. And then KBM, they're basically downsizing next year. Chase Purdy full-time, Jack Wood part-time with Kyle Busch. And then I guess they're going to support Rev Racing to run Nick Sanchez. It's going to be interesting to see. Of course, they are downsizing as a team, but it's, I guess, if they're supporting another team, it's not really downsizing because they're now just concentrating their efforts to help another team, rather than run two full-time teams and a part-time team. So it's going to be interesting. And we talked about it in the lead up to the show. Both of these drivers, Purdy and Wood, aren't very good. So I think potentially be a rebuilding year for Kyle Busch Motorsports after transitioning to Chevrolet. I think it's going to be an interesting transition, and we'll have to see how these drivers fare out and how much mentorship is Kyle Busch going to need to have in this team. And of course, the whole reason why he's still running this team, because he could have just left and folded up shop, but he's got 55 employees, and wanted to keep them going. So it's just as much for his employees as it is for him to keep racing. And of course, probably keep them employed and everything. And eventually, that's probably going to be his son's path into NASCAR and into the Cup Series, is probably through Kyle Busch Motorsports. So got to keep it around running for him. So we'll see how this team is in 2023. Compared to last year, what's the fall off going to be? Just from a speed wise, not a talent, perspective, and how they race, but just like in qualifying practice, what's their speed going to be like compared to how they were last year and in previous years, where they're used to being in the top half of the charts and the top 5 of the charts every week? Are they going to have speed fall off and be closer to the bottom of the top 10, or even outside the top 10 when it comes to practice and qualifying times? We'll have to see. But it should be interesting, especially with two drivers who are largely unproven here in the truck series.
And two guys that are known for destroying equipment too, especially Jack Wood, who's pretty terrible. And he's the anchor guy on the 51 car or 51 truck. So that speaks to the fact that they need funding. And even though, for as much as they need funding, it tells you how bad Kyle Busch Motors. He went from having two guys that were competing for a championship to two guys that are going to destroy a lot of equipment. So that's something we're going to see for sure. I mean, Jimmie coming back is huge. He's going to run the Project 56 deal. I mean, it's basically out there. It hasn't been fully announced, but Jimmie, Jeffy, and Mike Rockenfeller are going to be running that Project 56 car. Jimmie, I think, wants to run the double, so I figure Ganassi will give him a car to try to do that at Indy, and then he'll try to qualify for the 500 and then try to make the 600. It'll be easier to make the 600. It'll make the 500, to be fair. So that'll be interesting. He said he's got off-road opportunities, which would be huge considering that's where he came from. There's other things he's got going on, so we'll see what happens with Jimmie Johnson. Hopefully, his investment in Petty GMS speaks to him wanting to stay stateside. Some of the stuff he said after the IndyCar season made it seem like he was going to move to Europe, but I guess after the discussion with all of his ladies in his life, he's going to stay here. I say ladies in his life, meaning his wife and two daughters, along with probably mom, told him to stay over here. And he's like, well, I got shit tons of money. I'm going to go invest in a cup team. And that's what he did. So it's cool to see Jimmie Johnson investing in the Cup Series and investing as an owner. And not only that, but possibly being able to put some more, put another great person in the sport as an owner. So we'll see what happens with that. KBM, I'm just rooting for Nick Sanchez. I'm just glad he's going to have an opportunity to run for a title, and I think he's an underground favorite for a Truck Series title. I mean, Zane Smith and then the Thor Sport people, they're all going to be there. But after that, who's there? Nick Sanchez is a favorite, honestly. And I kind of want to look at his odds right now and put some money on him because I think he has a good chance. Running with Kyle Busch, RCR, all the support they're going to have there to possibly go and win a championship. All right, so let's get into the roundup. Pecco Bagnaia wins the MotoGP World Championship at Valencia, becomes the first Ducati rider to win a world championship since Casey Stoner. Had issues at the start of the race with Fabio Quartararo. There was they lost one of the winglets off of his bike early in the race, so that was part of what affected him. He kind of just laid back during the whole entire race. He only had to finish 14th to lock up the championship, so it didn't really matter. Alex Rins in the last race for Suzuki in MotoGP for this time, maybe ever, wins by just under 4/10 over Brad Binder on the KTM, who had a great ride. Jorge Martin finished third after starting on pole. Fabio Quartararo, and trying to defend his world championship, finished fourth. The top four were within 2 seconds. Miguel Oliveira finished fifth for KTM in his last ride on the factory bike. He's going to be going back. He'll be dropping down to the satellite outfit. Joan Mir, former world champion, finished sixth. Luca Marini and Nea Bastianini finishes third in the world championship, ahead of his future teammate, Pecco Bagnaia, the world champion, and Pecco's good friend and former runner-up in the world championship, Franco Morbidelli, who finished 10th, one of his better runs of the year. So Yamaha has a lot of work to do going into 2023, a lot of work to do to keep Fabio Quartararo from going to Honda or wherever, Ducati, because they got all these bikes. So see what happens with that. But Alex Rins gets the win for Suzuki. Pecco Bagnaia wins the championship by 17 points. Biggest comeback ever in the history of MotoGP. 91 points behind at one point and came back to win. He won 5 Grand Prix, finished second once and third twice in the span of, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 races to make that comeback after Sachsenring, and huge result there to go and win by 17 points. Most DNFs by a world champion as well. So 5 DNFs, goes and gets that. First since Casey Stoner for Ducati, first Italian to win the world championship since one Valentino Rossi, the GOAT. So he's the first world champion for the VR46 Academy in the MotoGP World Championship. They've won Moto2 and Moto3 championships. So Valentino Rossi proving once again he is cultivating talent, cultivating the future of motorcycle racing there. In the team's title, of course, Ducati wins, constructors as well. Alicia Spargo had an engine problem early in the race and lost out on what should have been a third-place finish for him. Jack Miller fell off his bike trying to go for third in the World Championship in his last race for Ducati. Binder finishes a point behind his soon-to-be teammate. Alex Rins, Johan Zarco, Jorge Martin, and Miguel Oliveira round out the top 10. In Moto2, the results of the race at Valencia, Pedro Acosta gets the victory, but Augusto Fernandez wins the Moto2 World Championship before he moves up to a race for Gas in the KTM second team. He will be the world champion moving up. Tony Arbolino was third. Fermin Aldeguer, Albert Arenas makes up your top 5. There was an accident early in the race for Cameron Bobier, Alonso Lopez, Celestino Vietti, all those guys. Celestino Vietti had a retirement there early in the race. Cameron Bobier in his last race for in Moto2 gets knocked out early. He had a good qualifying run there to get him in that spot. And Alonso Lopez for up to 4th. Yeah, so unfortunate end for Cameron Bobier to finish his Moto2 career. We'll see what he's going to do next year in Moto America. So it'll be nice to see him back here in the States riding Moto America. Multiple champion there. Sean Dillon Kelly fell outside the points in 18th. Joe Roberts was the last point scorer in 15th. The point standings, Augusto Fernandez wins. Ayagura didn't get any points there. He didn't get any points in the last 2 races. I don't know what that is there. Yeah, last 2 races. Aaron Canet finishes 3rd. Tony Arbolino 4th. Pedro Acosta 5th. Joe Roberts ends up finishing 9th in the championship. Bobier 17th. And Sean Dillon Kelly 29th in the World Championship for Moto2. In Super GT, Bertrand Baguette and the Calsonic Impul team, the Calsonic Nissan Z these days. It used to be the GTR from the old Gran Turismo days, but now it's a Z. Wins the first title for Nissan since 2015 in the GT500 category, and the first win for the Impul team since 1997. So 25 years for the Impul Z Nissan team to get the championship. Naoki Yamamoto, or no, that's the winners of the GT. The Kazuki Hiramine and Bertrand Baguette, the former IndyCar driver who has raced in Japan for many years, to go and get that victory. JP D'Oliveira, who's been in America running sports cars and stuff, won the championship in GT300 and the Nissan GTR. Hideki Muto, former Andretti Autosport IndyCar driver in the IRL, won for ARTA NSX in the GT300 category. So, I'm going to results here. Yeah. The Calisonic Impulse Z team finished second. Their closest rival in the number 3 Craft Sports Motul Z, Nissan Chio and Takaboshi finished fourth. So, and then the Motul Autec Z23 car with Matsuda and Quintarelli, the historic factory Nissan Z car, finished 13th in class. Only ran late laps. They got in an accident with a Sard Supra in GT500. I don't know why. GT300. You talked about the ARTA NSX, Hideki Muto. Kosuke Matsura, former IndyCar driver, finished second in a Lamborghini. And then, as I mentioned, I'm sort of trying to look for where the GTR Nissan finished. It's not anywhere up close. Yeah, they finished 19th. Jesus. Oh, so they didn't even have to. They just had to show up. That's what that was. All right. Well, credit to them. Nissan gets both championships. It's nice. And it's a good day. Nissan gets both championships in Super GT. Excuse me. In WEC at Bahrain, last race of their championship here this year. The standings going into the final race. There's a tie between the Toyota team, Sebastian Buemi, Brendan Hartley, Ryo Hirakawa, their car, and then the Alpine of Negral, Lapierre, and Vaxivier. So that we'll see whoever finishes out of the other will win the Drivers' Championship there. LMP2 teams, Joda Sport has the lead over United Autosports, and it's more than 25 points. So 96.06, yeah. Yeah, they have more than a 25-point lead. So Joda Sports won that. GTM has a TF Sport has a 20-point lead over Northwest AMR. Both are Aston Martin teams. In Hypercar, it's Toyota's already won because they have a 26-point lead over Alpine. Cup for GT manufacturers, that's going to come down to the wire. At this race, only 1 point between Ferrari and Porsche. LMP2 drivers, Roberto Gonzalez, Antonio Felix da Costa, and Will Stevens are up by 28 points on Oliver Jarvis, Josh Pearson. So that's basically done. GTM drivers, Ben Keating and Marco Sorensen, the teammates, are up by 20 points on Paul Dallana and David Pittard and Nicky Thiem. So we'll see if Ben Keating can win that championship before he moves over to Corvette racing next year for GTM. Alexander Perguidi and James Collado are the GT Pro leaders by 11 on Michael Christensen and Kevin Estra, the Porsche drivers, and 14 on Jimmy Bruni, who's also a Porsche driver. So Ferrari versus Porsche there. Going into the finale at Bahrain, plenty of stuff to get into after the race. Iron Lynx will be running the Lamborghini LMDH program and also running Lamborghinis in GT, including running at Daytona and the Michelin Endurance Championship, or whatever the hell they call it, the Michelin Cup or whatever, for all the endurance races. That also includes the Iron Dames ladies, the ladies team that has stood out here this year. They won at the 24 Hours of Spa, so that'll be cool to see. Hopefully they'll be running a ladies, or at least run ladies here in America. They have a great program there. We'll be looking forward to seeing Lamborghini here, but that's more in 2024, not as much in 2023. In World Superbikes, 2 races to go in their championship. The standings, basically, Alvaro Bautista racing for a World Superbike Championship. He is 82 points ahead of Toprak Raskatlioglu, defending world champion. He's got a 98-point lead on Johnny Ray, so it could be locked up this weekend at Indonesia. But they have this race and then also at Phillip Island the following week to go and decide that championship. We'll talk about it here on the GSP. And, of course, Garrett Gerloff will be running for BMW next year in World Superbike. No other Americans as of now that we can see that will be in World Superbikes. So we'll see what Garrett Gerloff can do. A lot of changes coming to World Superbikes for riders next year. In WRC, the championship's already over in the World Rally Championship, but they have one race to go. Tanek is leaving Hyundai, the former world champion. We have Esa-Pekka Lappi, who's going to be taking over his ride. And then in future roadmap, I don't know, 70% complete. Okay, whatever. So the standings right now going into this race, I think the top 2 are already set. What is it? He has a 29-point lead. So yeah, Kalle Rovanperä is the world champion. Tanek right now is in second. Thierry Neuville third. Elfyn Evans fourth. And Takamoto Katsuda is fifth. Craig Breen in the best Ford is sixth, running the full time. But then you have Sebastian Ogier, former multi-time world champion, is eighth, and he's only run like 3 races. It tells you how the World Rally Championship is. It's the first time I think they've had Rally Japan as their closer, but interesting to see what comes to the fore here. It's 17 points between Evans and Katsuda, the teammates. I doubt that unless Katsuda goes out of his mind, that he'll be able to beat Evans there in Rally Japan. But we'll tell you if that does happen. Ogier, who has only run 5 races, and he won the last race at Rally Spain to get to sixth in the championship. He is 6 points ahead of Craig Breen. Sordo, Lappi, Greensmith round out the top 10. Sebastian Loeb, who has only run 4 races this year, won at Rally Monte Carlo, finished 8th in, I don't even know what that is, and then had 2 retirements in 4 races, is 11th. So we'll see what happens. We'll talk about it next week on the GSP for episode 144. Josh, I'll throw it to you. There were a lot of trades, 10 trades, more than we've seen in a while in the NFL. I think they need to move the trade. They're talking about moving the trade deadline back, which would make it a lot more interesting. But in regards to the Jaguars, they traded James Robinson to the Jets, but didn't really change. It didn't slow you guys down. You're able to go and get a big win in at home. You got to celebrate your birthday with a victory. Keep yourselves in the hunt, sorta, in the AFC South, because the Colts are basically done now, with Jeff Saturday now becoming their coach. Tennessee lost to Kansas City, but they're probably going to win this. Houston's out, but they have a running back. Jacksonville's in this division. They have an outside chance of winning, getting themselves in the playoff, but it's going to be very tough, and they're not going to have a very long playoff run if they do get into the playoffs, but they still have a chance.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. The last couple of weeks of the season, 9 games, I guess, 8 games of the season left. Well, first of all, the trade for Calvin Ridley. I mean, I was hoping that they would pick a wide receiver or trade for a wide receiver, and I was hoping for like a Chase Claypool or something like that. Someone who's a big target, is fast and can pick up yards after the catch, things like that, and be a deep threat for Trevor Lawrence. Expand the field for the boundaries, but they surprised me by going for the Calvin Ridley move, and it's surprising because Ridley, I completely forgot about him. He's currently not active right now, and he's been suspended for gambling on the NFL, and the NFL suspended him for a year. And of course, ironically, the game that he bet on with the Falcons was the Falcons game, betting on the Falcons against the Jaguars last season, after Thanksgiving. So that was pretty funny that now he's playing or going to be playing for the team that he bet against a season ago. So funny how it all works out. But of course, suspended right now. We'll have to apply for reinstatement, and we'll see if he can be the number one wideout, which he looked like he was before being suspended. He looked like he was a number one wide receiver, and then for the Falcons. So I think he can be that same type of player for the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence there. So we'll see how it goes in 2023. But and he does look like he's going to be training as well. He's heard that he's kept up his training regimen and everything like that. So, expect him to, come out and be motivated to come out and play in 2023. So, hopefully it works out. But, on the other hand, this game on Sunday, they played the Oakland Raiders. They went down 17-0 in the first quarter, first half. But then they came back and scored a touchdown before the half, and then they got a field goal, made it, 20-10. And then they scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, and were able to go out and take the lead from the Raiders. They had a close game. They fourth quarter the Raiders had some opportunities, but then they just couldn't convert on fourth down at the end of the game. And then the Jaguars missed a field goal, gave the Raiders some hope, but then they couldn't convert on fourth down again. And then the Jaguars just got enough, and then they eventually made the field goal. And then the Raiders had one last gasp at trying to get the win, but then they were able to not do anything, and they turned it over on downs to end the game. So. Good performance by Trevor Lawrence. First half wasn't really that great. Just wasn't making enough plays. But then second half kind of turned it around, or actually into the first half really being able to drive down the field. Had a couple of running plays, and I was joking with my family. I was like, "Oh, is this Blake Bortles again?" And he had some good runs there at the end of the half to get them into field goal range, and then they got the field goal, and then. Second half of the game, they were jump started by a good kick return from Jamal Agnew, and then they were able to get the touchdown there, and then Trevor Lawrence got it to Christian Kirk in the end zone, and then they had another play to later in the game to Travis Etienne, and also. Trevor Lawrence was about to get sacked in the end zone, but he made a good pass to Marvin Jones. So Marvin caught the ball and was able to get the first down towards the end of the game in the fourth quarter, and that was a good play. Showed Trevor's patience and ability to stay in it and avoid the sack and get the conversion. So it was a pretty good play there. So it was a fun day and everything. I was able to enjoy with with my brother, my dad, and one of our other friends that came with us, and we were able to go out there and watch the Jaguars defeat the Raiders, and I'm glad that they won on for my birthday. Not on my birthday, but it was a couple days after it. So glad I was able to attend that and actually see them win. Of course, the last time the Jaguars were down by at least 17 points and came out and a win was 2017 or 2014 against the New York Giants, and we were down, I think, 21-0 in the first half, and then came back in the second half and defeated them 24-25. And so now the Jacksonville Jaguars have a record of 2-116 when it comes to being down at least by 17 points, and I was actually at both of those comebacks, so pretty interesting statistic there. Of course, mentioned earlier, the streaker jumped off the the ledge or whatever and ran out onto the field as the Raiders are punting it, and then that stopped the play. And then I think he ran for like 70 yards on the field, and then apparently he was also greased up in Vaseline somehow, and he was greased up and everything, and then took a couple of security people to tackle him and everything. So he made an impact on the game, and some jokes and memes going around about that. But that was an interesting moment for sure. But funny thing to happen, because then also the last time that I was at the Jaguars game last year in December against the Houston Texans, there was another fan that jumped out onto the field, and it was a running play, and then he jumped out on the field and said, I'm open, Trevor," and James Robinson ran it in for a touchdown. So I don't know why that keeps happening, but apparently it does. I don't know if it's a Florida man thing or not, but kind of interesting there. But the Jaguars now 2.5 games behind in the AFC South to the Titans. The Titans, of course, lost on Sunday Night Football to the Chiefs, who the Jaguars will play next Sunday in Kansas City, 1:00 game. So we'll see what kind of game the Jaguars can play against the Kansas City Chiefs. Doug Peterson, a student of Andy Reid, so maybe play style wise going to be very similar. But of course the Chiefs struggled against the Titans during that game. The Titans play a very physical brand of football, and they took it to the Chiefs. The Chiefs were able to basically just like squeak by with a victory there. So we'll see what the Jaguars are able to do. A week after the Chiefs have been tested to the brink of their their system. Do they underplay the Jags and think that it's going to be easy win after a tough fought game, and then lay an egg or something like that, or the Jags going to be really tested because they haven't really faced a team like the Chiefs in a while. So we'll see if they can go up there and have a game at least against the Chiefs, be competitive, and hopefully I'd like to see them win. I'm not sure yet though, so I won't feel good about a win or confident about a win until after the first quarter, after the way that they play. So we'll see what happens next Sunday against the Chiefs. But good game overall. Glad to be there for it. And then of course fantasy wise, closed out should be closing out with the win here. So good to right the ship there for at least this week, and continue on and go for there for the fantasy leagues. So good week overall. Glad to finally get a win after 5 close losses in a row. Not sure how much more of it I could take, but at least finally get a win.
Yeah, your guys get a win in real football, and then you get the fantasy win. Fall just outside of the dual record deal, because everybody ahead of you scored over 200 points. You scored 189 in the end. The final tally, you finished 6th. I end up getting the win. I had mainly because I had Joe Mixon and Joe Burrow. Essentially my whole entire team. I mean, Kenyon Drake scored 2 touchdowns today. for Baltimore against New Orleans in their 27-13 victory. So my running backs had 93.7 points in my fantasy deal. Joe Mixon, of course, had 5 touchdowns yesterday and 63.5 points. Joe Burrow and Trevor Lawrence scored 51 points, I think 75, was 95, so 50.95 points. So my whole entire fantasy productivity came from 4 players there because I have nobody else on my team. Drake Jackson had 8.3, and he's done. 2 guys are on bye. I have somebody on IR, so got to win there. Got to win in the other league that I'm in. Move myself up to 9th there. In Fall Brawl, my league, I moved myself up to 6th, so I'm back in playoff contention. Game ahead of 3 teams, including Vic, who is making a comeback, trying to get himself back in the mix. He's in the top 5. Wilson has won 4 weeks this year, and he's had 3 different team names in that span, conveniently. So he's trying to win this championship for, I think, the 3rd time. Hopefully I can prevent that. This is the best week I've had this year. I finished 4th twice, 4th twice, 5th once, or 5th twice, 4th and 5th twice. So this is my best week of the year, but wasn't enough to go and pass them. We won our sleeper league. Niners were on a bye. Hopefully, health. Elijah Mitchell, a couple other players are on IR ready to return. So we'll see if those guys can come back. Christian McCaffrey, of course, is the big story in regards to the offense. But we need everybody on both sides of the ball, especially in the secondary and the back 7, to be back, so that if the Niners have a chance to beat teams like Philly, teams like Seattle, they're going to need to defend. And that's what's going to have to happen. Minnesota, with their offense at 7-1. Right now, the Niners are going to be traveling for sure. Unless a miracle happens, they're going to end up traveling for all 3 of the games if they want to go and get to Arizona for a Super Bowl. So we'll see about that. Good week in fantasy. Hoping for a good week in bowling. It's been a rough year so far. Had a little bright spot on Thursday. Hoping to follow that through this week with three days of bowling and put up some good scores. If not, as long as we win, it's fine. But as long as I do my thing, it'll be fine too. But we'll see what happens with that. We'll, of course, go over it because as we're getting to the point of this racing season's getting over, we're going to have to start talking about football. So we'll be talking about it more next week for sure. Formula One, Brazilian Grand Prix this coming weekend, Josh. And, we figure it's the last sprint of the year. It's something I'll give the now 2-time Formula One world champion Max Verstappen credit. He came out and said, I don't know why we're running so many sprint races. I agree with that. There really shouldn't be this many sprints because they don't have enough engine power units to run sprints, let alone the fact that sprints don't really do anything to the race itself. But there is a sprint race this weekend, last one of the year. Last year it provided one of the best races of the year because they DQ'd Lewis Hamilton in qualifying, sent him to the back. He moved all the way up to 10th in the sprint and then won the Brazilian Grand Prix on one of his better performances of his illustrious career. Right now, I think that's the last win right now. That's the last race he's won in the process. Max Verstappen tried to run him off the track, but Lewis won. Or no, he won Saudi. So yeah, last time he's won a race was the first Saudi Grand Prix when Max Verstappen tried to brake test him and send him into the sky. But more than likely, I think I know where you're going. I know where I'm going for a win here. But the better question is What do you see behind Max Verstappen? Do we see Sergio Perez continuing his pull to get to second in World Championship? Do we see Ferrari actually show up? Or will Mercedes put up a fight here this weekend at Brazil?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, with how you bring that up, because, I mean, you've already started out in the outline for next week's show, and we were already calling Max Verstappen winning for the 15th time this season, and, just an endless pursuit of victories for Max Verstappen. But, behind that, of course, is what is more compelling now. With Lewis Hamilton, he's been doing pretty well as of late. And then, as his teammate, or Max Verstappen's teammate, has been doing pretty well. And Sergio Perez, last couple of races, finishing on the podium, and Lewis finishing on the podium. So, it's a very, interesting turn of events here. Last couple of races. We have a sprint race as well, which may make the lineup a little bit more interesting. Lewis, I mean, can he close the season, with another, we still have 2 more races left, but can he get another podium, before the end of the season? It's definitely possible. This is the race last year that almost spring-loaded the comeback for, his champion, or what should have been his championship last year. This was the, where we really thought that maybe Lewis could have won, and, can he come back to this track and this circuit and, go out and win? Or, if somehow Verstappen fails to win this race, or, can he, go on the podium, get a second or a third? I think they've shown a lot of pace, a lot of improvement the last couple of races. So, I think Lewis definitely has that capability. And, I think also, Sergio Perez, last couple of races, he's done pretty well. And, I think he can continue that streak and, get some of that success that, Verstappen's, and, both of them have cars on the podium as we close out the season. But, I think we also have to bring up Ferrari. Ferrari, last couple of races, they've kind of been hit or miss. They both, well, not really, but, they not on the level that Red Bull and Mercedes have been performing for sure. And, Carlos Sainz finished 5th, and Charles Leclerc finished in 6th at Mexico. And the previous race in the USGP, Leclerc, finished in 3rd, and his teammate did not even finish the race, first lap crash. But so it's been up and down for Ferrari. And can they come to Brazil? Can they come there and race possibly for a podium? I think they definitely might have the speed for it. But again, it's been this story of their year, is their strategy calls, and their ability to handle themselves under pressure. They just haven't been able to convert that into wins, or into podiums. So that's something to look out for. I think this weekend is how does Ferrari race? How do they perform in comparison to Mercedes and to Red Bull, of course, who has already won the constructors title and everything. So I think that's going to be interesting. Also looking at the midfield, with McLaren and Alpine, they've been, I think those two teams have been, racing pretty well, as of late. Lando's finished pretty good the last couple of races. Esteban Ocon's been up there. Alonso had his, stuff. He's been racing somewhat pretty well. He's always good kind of as a wild card pick as well. Ricardo had his good run in Mexico City. So could they continue those drivers from those teams? Can they continue to perform, as we close out the year, and, can they have a good run, another good result before the end of the season? So, it's going to be interesting to watch, this midfield battle, as we get to the end of the year, and, sort out, who's, in front of who at the end of the season. as far as the midfield goes. So yeah, it's going to be something that we'll look out for too. But I agree with you what you said earlier with sprint races. Definitely, I think there's an excess of that, and especially with the way things are right now with the Formula One. I mean, last year the sprint race seemed to provide entertainment value, but that was only because the championship was so close between Verstappen and Hamilton. And this year, now it's a runaway. Kind of seems pointless to have the sprint races. Especially now that the season's basically over.
Yeah, it's something we're going to see on Saturday. I mean, qualifying will be on Friday afternoon, and then Saturday they'll have the sprint. But I don't think it'll make that much of a difference. Personally, I think Mercedes will get one on the podium. Figure Lewis will be on the podium. I think Ferrari will be on the podium. I don't think Sergio will get on there. I think Charles Leclerc gets a second. Lewis gets third behind Max. And then Sergio Perez finishes fourth. Which puts more pressure for the finale for second in the World Championship. That also means that more than likely Mercedes won't get second in the Constructors because they would need both Ferraris to be out of the points and both Mercedes to score big points to get back into it. I figure George Russell gets another top 5 in that spot, and then we're kind of status quo. After that, I do think that these next 2 races kind of fit Alpine if they can go and finish the deal. So they'll finish ahead of McLaren. Aston Martin's on a run here. I feel like Aston Martin's going to pass the Alfa Romeo team for 7th in the Constructors. And then in the battle for 8th and 9th, AlphaTauri goes and passes Haas here in the next 2 races. But we will see how that all works out. Speaking of Haas, the rumors are out there that Nico Hülkenberg will be taking over for Mick Schumacher at Haas to become a driver there, for 2 veteran drivers to take over there at Haas to save damage and the whole bit. So we'll see what happens with that. Supposedly that announcement will be coming here this week. But with that, we are now time for the sim segment. Josh, let us know what you're doing in regards to iRacing and other gaming and other things that you're seeing out there in the sim realm.
Yeah, of course. As always, I've been racing on iRacing last week. Did some racing at Phoenix with the XFinity car, and it was definitely a challenge. I'd never raced at Phoenix before with this new layout, with the dog leg and everything, and it was a bit of a different experience because, like, running the dog leg, you kind of, I guess, because I use one monitor, I don't have multiple monitors, and you kind of lose your field of view almost because you cut to the dog leg, and then you still have to maintain your field of vision to the other cars, and sometimes it's like running the dog leg, you kind of lose track of where you are in relation to the other cars, and you have to make sure you don't make contact or anything like that, and as you cut down and cut the dog leg and then come back up, you got to make sure you don't run into anybody, and that was a little bit of a challenge doing that. It was interesting, the corners, I guess, like, turns what used to be 3 and 4, now 1 and 2. You got to kind of pedal it through the, from the braking zone through the, the exit of the corner until you get the exit. You kind of pedal, feathering the throttle, and then you accelerate off the corner, but you got to make sure you don't, get on the gas too quickly, or else you get into the wall. And then you can almost kind of send it into 3 and 4, use the bottom, and then just, brake hard, and then just pick up the gas, and then just let the car kind of come back to the wall, or you can cut back down to the dog leg and get a good run down into turn 1, or use the momentum into the dog legs, so to cut the dog leg. So it's interesting how to run, how you can run that track. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a track that takes a lot of finesse. It's definitely kind of a driver's track in a way, and that's kind of how I felt about the racing this weekend at Phoenix. Is that you definitely had to have a good technique to run run that track, and it's not quite the same as the old Phoenix was. Where you could really run hard and everything, but this track takes a lot of finesse, and in certain parts you can run aggressive, but I feel like turns 1 and 2 really make or decide your lap and how quick you're going to be. So it was a good experience running that. Think this week on iRacing, now that NASCAR is over, it kind of deviates from the real life NASCAR schedule, of course. Maybe do some iRacing super speedway with the trucks, possibly, I don't know, we'll see. See what else here on the schedule this week for NASCAR. Class A NASCAR fixed at Kansas. iRacing Super Speedway, we already mentioned that. Legends Series, so the 87s at Talladega, might do that. Possibly always try to do the super speedways there because it's fun to run 225 miles an hour in a stock car, unrestricted, and then you actually have to lift in the corner and everything. Chicagoland for iRacing XFinity, so maybe run that. I don't know yet. Let's see for IndyCar this week on iRacing. Oh, they're also at Talladega, so that's going to be incredible as well. So running 260 miles an hour down into turn 3 or 250 maybe, I don't know. So that should be interesting as well. Going that type of speed in an IndyCar. Other things. Let's see for road racing. We got the USF 2000 at Gateway, Global Mazda MX-5 Cup at Summit Point Raceway, always good. Spec Racer, so that's the Sports Car Club of America Spec Racer Fords at Indianapolis Motor Speedway Road Course, Ferrari GT3 Evo at Road America. So there's gonna be a lot of choices to run, especially as the off season comes into play. You get bored, got to get that racing fix in, and you got to go run on iRacing or whatever racing game of your choice is. So definitely probably have some time this week to run iRacing. Maybe, I don't know, we might have another storm here in Florida in November. Maybe have some time to run on iRacing, but I don't know if the storm is going to be major enough to get any serious time off from that. So we'll see. But of course, try to do it on the weekend or something like that, and try to run on there. And of course, end of the show. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at JP Huffine, and see all my things that I have to say about the Jaguars, about racing, about other things, and of course, you can follow me on Twitch and see my stuff on Twitch at twitch.tv/useller2 and go there and watch my stuff when I race. I'll tweet out the link when I'm streaming and everything, so you can watch me run on there. And of course, you can follow Grip Strip Podcast YouTube, where we have everything and where we have our videos from the last couple of weeks. You can go in there and see what we have to say, and see our faces, see our latest episodes and everything, if you choose to watch a video form where instead of audio. So go in there, subscribe to our page, and continue to support the efforts here that we're doing right now. So Phil, turn it over to you, of course. Always, glad to continue to do it with you. And we're closing out the racing season in 2022, getting closer to the end and everything, and it's been a pretty interesting year. Of course, a lot of things that happened, and we had our opinions and takes on all of it. So glad NASCAR's over and everything, and but glad that we were able to cover it this year.
Yeah, I'm glad that you were with me this whole way, and glad that we'll be able to do this for a while, hopefully, God willing, because we have a good thing going here. And thanks to you for, as always, being my sidekick and right-hand man and backing me up on the good days, the bad days, and everything. And also to Clayton Caldwell for coming in and giving us his takes on NASCAR Cup. We will be back next week. Of course, you can find me at Philip G. Matthew on Twitter. You can find us at Gripster Pod on Twitter, at Gripster Podcast on YouTube, as Josh mentioned. That's where we have the video feed, as we hear shredding going on over there, conveniently while I'm finishing the show. We will be back next week for episode 144 of the Gripster Podcast, going over everything that happens at the Brazilian Grand Prix or Sao Paulo Grand Prix, all things WEC to end their season. World Superbikes will have their last race this coming week, and then their finale at Phillip Island, Rally Japan, and the World Rally Championship. And then we'll talk about the season finale in Formula 2, where Logan Sargent is trying to get enough super license points to become a Formula 1 driver and take over the second seat at Williams. We'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about NFL Week 10. Niners will be playing on Sunday night against the LA Chargers of Anaheim, Alameda, and all residing counties. We will preview the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which will be Sebastian Vettel's last 299 and last race of his illustrious career, and all the other news that comes from the postseason test, which will be young drivers and then the drivers that are moving along, like Fred Alonso to Aston Martin taking over for Sebastian Vettel, and all the other things I'll come on from there. Talk about that here on episode 144. Thank you for listening to Gripster Podcast. Take care. Be nice to one another. Understand we're all in this together, struggling the way life is. So be nice to one another. Take care. Listen to this show. Like, subscribe, tell people about it. We're more laid back. We're more laissez-faire, but we give you the information that you need because racing is a family sport, and that's how Josh and I were able to meet each other through a random page on Facebook, and that we were both kind of similar thinking, and we're able to balance each other out in terms of how we looked at this sport, and we're together doing this thing. So it's the way life works. People, you don't have to agree on everything to be friends, and you don't have to go and look at everything the same way to be able to go and enjoy the same thing. But either way, we're doing this because it's a passion, because racing is fun. It's awesome. Being able to see cars go fast or motorcycles or whatever go fast is fun. So for Josh, and for thanks to Clayton Caldwell again, and for Josh, I'm Phil. Thanks for listening to Gripster Podcast. We'll be back next week, episode 144. Getting closer to Thanksgiving. Gary, 3 years into this deal. We've been doing this deal, so it's something. Hopefully we can get to do more of this. For that, take care. God bless. Goodbye.